Win their first Premier League game in 22 years. Wonder who that was against. Good wins too, though, for Manchester United and Newcastle. In rugby, a bad weekend for the home nations, and Mark Cavendish goes out on a high.
After a grey and gloomy start to November, there's change on the way with some sunshine in store for many of us today. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
Hello there, very good morning to you on this Monday morning. Welcome to the programme. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
The self-service machine thing is interesting because I think it takes away any personability from shopping. People who go to the shop. I used to go to the shop to have a chat with people.
Did you?
That's so you.
Yeah.
And I was usually the person that was standing behind people like you, thinking, for crying out loud, how long is this going to be?
I hate these self-service machines, but not because it's impersonal, just because half the time they don't work, or they're saying you haven't put your item on the thing, and then the light flashes and nobody comes, and you're just going...
Do you find the pressure? Because I quite enjoy them, but it's when you have the person from the shop is nearby waiting to go, oh, that middle-aged man there is going to have trouble, and I'm thinking, no, I'm going to be doing this, and I'm going like this extra quick, and then it comes up, seek assistance, and
I wonder, has he been stealing anything?
I know, shifty eyes.
All your kids are with you, and they suddenly lift something off the scales and the whole thing, and start again, and you're like, stop it.
But the thing is about shopping, high street shopping, there is a sociability about it. There is. I'm being genuine here. If I go out and I go to the chemist or I go to the vegetable shop or whatever it is, I'm talking to Eamonn, how are you? How are things? How's your children? How's this? How's that? And I think there is a sociability to that. You put machines in the way and it does away with all that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. We're all agreed pretty much, are we?
Okay, we're all agreed with that, yeah.
All right for speed, but you can't have a chat with them, that's it.
There you go.
OK. See you later, Paul.
Thank you.
The Prime Minister spending this Armistice Day in France alongside British and French veterans at the Arc de Triomphe.
So Keir Starmer will become our first leader to attend France's national commemoration event since Winston Churchill. Now,
it's a significant moment for both the Prime Minister and the French President Emmanuel Macron, a show of European solidarity in the days after Donald Trump's re-election in America, apparently. Well, let's speak now to former political editor at LBC, Theo Usherwood. Good morning to you,
Very
Theo.
good morning,
Is that reading too much into it? I mean, Macron doesn't represent the European Union, does he? This is our closest partner. Obviously, a huge number of our war dead were lost in parts of northern France and Flanders and all that region.
It's significant, and it's significant because, of course, this is the talks afterwards. Obviously, it's the first time a British Prime Minister has travelled to France for Armistice Day since Winston Churchill was invited by Charles de Gaulle. But most importantly, from our perspective, is the talks that take place afterwards, because, of course, this is going to go focus around Trump, his re-election, what it means for defence spending. Keir Starmer has said that he'll increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, but he hasn't said when. We've got the Strategic Defence Review out in the spring, which will look at defence spending. Of course, he doesn't want to say when because, of course, that would be
because they're not even committed on the basis that they're reviewing things. They're not committed to the duration of this parliamentary session.
No.
They could get through without ever, in the next 5 years, adding a single penny to the defence budget.
But I think Trump will probably change that because he would like to see defence spending amongst NATO countries. It's already set at 2%. He'd like it to go up to 3%. And, of course, the way to deal with Trump, I think the broadly accepted, the way to deal with Trump is not to turn around and say, no, we're not going to listen to you, we're not going to do what you want, because America provides the bulk of military support when it comes to taking on Vladimir Putin on Ukraine's eastern frontier. And if NATO wants to continue to enjoy American support, and Trump's very sceptical about it, he doesn't believe in these supranational bodies, whether it be the EU or NATO, then we're going to have to show him that we're willing to cooperate and willing to meet or go some way to meeting his demands, because if we don't, it's very likely he's just going to pull the whole thing back.
Yeah, and there are lots of questions about what a Trump presidency means for Ukraine. And, you know, overnight, President Putin and President-elect Trump have had their first phone call. What can we take away from that?
It's significant, and I think it will be significant because it will have to remain. What remains to be seen is, what happens in terms of some sort of agreement, peace agreement. How far what do we give? What is America willing to say in terms of brokering that peace with President Zelensky's Ukraine? Will it mean carving off part of Ukraine? But at the same time, there is understood to be pressure, which will likely come out of this meeting between Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, to get to Joe Biden, because there's a split amongst his own advisors about whether to use long-range Storm Shadow missiles, which of course could potentially reach Moscow, and can pressure be put on Biden to try and secure his legacy by authorising the use of these missiles. Europe doesn't really want to do it without American approval, and that could of course push Putin back further and make those negotiations, if and when they will happen. We presume they will happen when Trump becomes, after the inauguration. It will make it, more difficult for Putin to secure the best deal that he possibly can.
Theo, no reason why you should know the answer to this, but I'm just really curious now. They say since Winston Churchill, nobody's been invited since 1944, and Winston Churchill to this Armistice Day. So does a British Prime Minister only turn up if invited? And does this mean that no one has been invited, or these invites have been turned down over the years?
So I think, I don't know the exact answer to that question. It is an invitation only. You can't, it's outside the at the feet of the Arc de Triomphe. And of course, there was in 1944. There's a picture on the Imperial War Museum website. I looked it up. It's quite the picture of Winston Churchill there next to de Gaulle. Of course, it was towards the end of the Second World War, but this was a commemoration to mark the end of the Great War, the First World War. So it is an honour, and I think it shows, and this is the way I think Number 10 would view it amongst some, the closeness of the relationship when it comes to Europe and Britain. Of course, we've since left the European Union, back in 2016. That deal's gone through, and I think it's significant that Starmer's been invited. But again, if we're showing support for the European Union and showing support for the French in this way, does that cause potentially further down the line ructions with the Trump?
He's got to try and do that twin track thing, hasn't he, of not alienating anybody at this point. Just explain to us how big a leap it would be from what we're spending on defence now to get up to 2.5 by, say, 2030. Because, what would be the reason behind stalling, other than the Strategic Defence Review, other than it would just mean more tax rises, which would make them more unpopular and therefore harder to be re-elected? If you
just leave defence spending where it is, roughly around 2.3%, and the extra money's gone in to secure that, then the Institute for Fiscal Studies said after the last budget, just to keep parity with spending in other departments, an extra £9 billion of tax rises is needed. So if we're then going to go up to 2.5% of GDP, it will need some significant injection of cash. And that's going to be very hard, because at the moment, defence isn't a priority for this government or for voters out there at large. The priority is the NHS. We've seen huge public sector pay rises. It's not an easy target to meet.
Theo, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. We'd like to know what you think about what Theo's been saying and reporting on this morning. This is in our poll of the day. Yes, every day we run these now, and we're asking, should Reform UK have been allowed to lay a wreath at the Cenotaph yesterday? We'll bring you the live results throughout the day. Make sure to stay tuned for that. That final result will then be announced during Martin Daubney's show. So they didn't get to lay a wreath then? Well, the official line is you have to have 6 members of Parliament in order to lay a wreath, and he was allowed to be at a balcony along with the leader of the Green Party, who I think has 4 members of Parliament. But Farage was outraged and said that this was the establishment excluding him because there was a member, the deputy leader, I think, of the DUP, was able to lay a wreath, and they only have 5 MPs. But the government have come back saying that is because there was a commitment made in days gone by to try and make sure that all parts of the United Kingdom were represented from all. But every Tom, Dick and Harry was able to lay a wreath yesterday. There have been hundreds of them laying up there. One wouldn't have thought it would have made much difference. It would have been nice to acknowledge that, but an awful lot of former prime ministers yesterday lined up. There's a lot of them. I saw a stat. Liz Truss was there. Well, I haven't fact-checked this, but I did see on social media that if Liz Truss lives to 96, she will have attended more wreath layings at the Cenotaph than she spent days
in Downing Street, which I thought was an interesting sum that somebody had done there. Anyway, let us know what you think about Farage yesterday. Should he have been able to lay a wreath as leader of Reform UK? Get involved by going to our website, gbnews.com/poll.
The Princess of Wales, she was there at the wreath laying yesterday. She had returned to official duties following her cancer treatment.
Yes, she joined King Charles and other members of the royal family to pay tribute on Remembrance Sunday.
Former butler to King Charles, Grant Harold, joins us now with his reflections on what he saw and how the royals presented themselves yesterday. Grant, good morning.
Good morning, Isabel. Good morning, Eamonn.
Good morning.
Yeah. How do you think the royals presented themselves yesterday?
Oh, very well. I mean, I think all the eyes were obviously on the Princess of Wales because we don't often get to see her make public appearances, and obviously the evening before the Remembrance service as well. And it's interesting because I think everyone's kind of analysing, trying to work out how she's getting on. And I think the reality is, with anyone that's always fighting this disease, I'm sure there's good days and there's bad days. And obviously she wants to return back to royal duties like her father-in-law. So it's quite nice to see her kind of back doing royal duties, if you like, even though I'm sure they're going to be few and far between, and hopefully that will increase. But it's just nice to see her kind of back on duty, if you like. And there was a moment that it was noted that she got quite emotional. But I think that was probably more to do with, obviously, the occasion of what was going on more than anything personal, I think.
It's a terrible temptation, isn't it, to analyse her every move just because she's held in such regard, and we all want to know she's OK. But it's one of those events that are so sombre. She looked so serious. It's impossible to get a real read on how she's doing because we know her, don't we, as the most smiley, joyful person on any engagement normally. So hard to tell. Lots being made in some of the papers about the caring, I think it was being described as maternal hand being put on her shoulder by Sophie Wessex. She's the Duchess of Edinburgh now, isn't she? As they turned and walked off the balcony. She's stepping very much into the shoes of the Queen there on the balcony. What did you make of that?
You're right, she is. And the wonderful thing about the Duchess of Edinburgh, she has got a very caring way about her. Both of them actually are very similar in personalities from what I remember. They both got on really well. Both adored, obviously, the late Queen, and they're good friends as well. So I'm sure that Sophie's a great support for Catherine as well, which is why I think it was quite interesting that the two of them were standing closely on the balcony. And I think, yes, in a way, to also give her a bit of support, because you're returning back to royal duties, and she's aware why everyone's watching, obviously, for the service, but she's also aware that everyone is looking at her and analysing her. And, you know, I saw some extraordinary kind of comments on social media yesterday about her appearance and everything. And as you said, I don't think it's coming from a place of being negative. I think people are just worried and they just want reassurance that she's getting better. But I would like to think that if she is returning to light royal duties, then that's an indication that she is doing well. But as you both will agree, you can never really tell. You know, like with everyone, I'm just praying and hoping that she is making a good recovery and that eventually she'll be back to kind of full steam, if you like.
Grant, thank you very much indeed for your take on things.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave it there. Thank you. I look at some of the other stories that we've got for you on this Monday morning. And Donald Trump has spoken to Russia's Vladimir Putin to urge him not to escalate the war in Ukraine. He's said to have reminded the president of America's military strength throughout his election campaign. The now president-elect promised to end the conflict within 24 hours of taking power.
The Israeli government has told citizens not to attend large events over the next week, including a specific warning to avoid UK cities. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned that pro-Palestine groups could be planning to harm Israelis at cultural and sports events. That's after Israeli football fans were attacked in Amsterdam following a match on Thursday evening.
MTV Europe Music Awards took place in Manchester. Host Rita Ora paid tribute to the late One Direction star Liam Payne, calling him one of the kindest people. Big winners included Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter and newcomer Ray.
Liam Payne was one of the kindest people that I knew. Yeah. And, you know, there were so many ways that we were talking about honouring him, and I think sometimes just simply speaking is enough. He had the biggest heart and was always the first person to offer help in any way that he could.
It's got chilly, hasn't it, over the weekend? Really, really cold. And as I left the house this morning, really blustery. I don't know about you, but lots of leaves coming down overnight. Let's find out from Ellie Glazier what the forecast has got in store for us all today.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So after a cloudy few days, there is some blue sky on the way as we head through the rest of this week. High pressure still very much in charge of our weather as we head over the next couple of days, bringing us those more settled conditions that we might see throughout today with plenty of sunshine around. We have seen a weather front just sinking southwards overnight, that eventually clearing the far southeast of England, and perhaps one or two showers just skirting the eastern coast of England as well. But for most of us, a dry and bright day with plenty of blue skies and plenty of sunshine on offer. Temperatures around about average for the time of year, but still feeling very pleasant in that sunshine. As we then go into Monday evening, still just a touch of cloud across the very far southwest of England, but for the majority of Scotland it will be staying dry with plenty of clear skies overnight, maybe one or two isolated showers just affecting Shetland and Orkney through the evening period. And across Northern Ireland, still staying dry overnight as well, plenty of clear spells here, and across Northern England and Northern Ireland we could see some patchy mist and fog developing during the early hours of Tuesday. For Wales and southern and central parts of England though, another dry night, plenty of clear spells around, still one or two showers just skirting the very far east of England, but for most places it should be staying dry overnight. As we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning, that's when we start to see that mist and fog developing across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and Scotland too, as we go into the start of Tuesday. And temperatures overnight under those clear skies likely to be dropping a bit chillier than we've seen recently, down into the low single figures, with a bit of a frost likely across the northern half of the UK to start on Tuesday. So a chilly start for many places, but mostly a dry start. Some of that mist and fog perhaps a little slow to clear across Northern Ireland, but for most of us it will be another dry day. Plenty of sunshine around, still some showers just lingering across the very far southeast of England, these perhaps turning heavy at times, but temperatures will be similar again on Tuesday, around about average for the time of year, so 11 or 12 in the south and 10 or 11 further north.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've got all the sports news coming next, including a shock defeat for Spurs at the hands of Ipswich. Paul Coit with that after this.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
In 2020, after almost 80 years, Oxford University's Pitt Rivers Museum removed its famous collection of shrunken heads with sewn-up lips and eyes made by the South American Shuar and Ashwar people. How do museums decide what should be shown and what should be confined to storage? Can controversial exhibits be left on display with suitable contextualisation in captions? Who would want to be a curator facing such controversial questions? For review, I'm delighted to be joined by journalist Eitan Smallman. Welcome to GB News. I think many people, when they hear that we're going to discuss museums or art galleries, think that it's going to be, that wokery question. But it strikes me, and I think it strikes you too, that this is not just about wokery at all. There are some really interesting ethical questions here. For example, let's start with this one, and there are several examples of it. Should we be displaying human bodies, the remains of human beings? Should we be displaying them in museums?
Absolutely. It's not just the usual suspects, young snowflakes, who are objecting to these things. There are just naturally cultural shifts, and people of all ages and all political persuasions may feel uneasy about displaying human remains of any kind, especially human remains that have been taken against the will of the communities or taken violently. Hilary Mantel led a campaign to remove a 7-foot 7-inch skeleton of Charles Byrne, known as the Irish Giant, from the Hunterian Museum. He had specifically said that he didn't want to be displayed and didn't want to be taken by anatomists, and yet was displayed for a couple of hundred years until a couple of years ago. He hasn't had the burial he requested, but he's no longer on public display.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The football results in the Premier League take a bit of analysing. We've got Paul here today for that. Good win for Man United. They're sort of, getting back on form under Ruud. And, what happened to Spurs and Ipswich?
Well, you know what? I'm pleased for Ipswich because they haven't won in the Premier League. It's the first game they've won in the Premier League. Well, 22 years it's been.
That's nonsense. See, people come out with stats. They haven't been in the Premier League for 22 years, so...
That is the point. They haven't been in the Premier League. I was just going to, I haven't been in the Premier League for 22 years, but they haven't won for 22 years, so, technically it's correct. But it's their first win this season. They haven't, like I said, they haven't won at all. By the way, what do you think of the shirts? That's the Ipswich. I mean, Ipswich wear blue. That's Ipswich.
Love it.
Do you know who designed that shirt?
No.
Ed Sheeran.
Really?
Ed Sheeran, who was there, I saw him there yesterday, that smug smile on his face as Ipswich won. But he designed the Ipswich shirts, went down to see the team afterwards. Their first Premier League win. Whereas Spurs, I just don't understand it. Lose to Crystal Palace, who haven't won all season. Then they go and beat Manchester City, who hadn't lost. And then beat Aston Villa and then lose at home to Ipswich. You just... what's consistent about Tottenham Hotspur is their inconsistency.
Yeah.
It really is. But Ipswich, hopefully for them and Kieran McKenna, this could be a turning point, but we'll have to see. So United, since Eric Ten Hag left, as you know, they've now won 3 out of 4 games. Ruud van Nistelrooy, this is it's his parting gesture, really, another win for them. So he waved to the crowd. So we don't know whether that means he's leaving Manchester United for good, or whether that just means that because he's now stepping down as interim manager. But Ruben Amorim, the man that's coming in, is supposed to start work today at Manchester United, but apparently the work permit hasn't come. Not really. The work permit hasn't come through yet. So he can't actually go and coach.
There for a week longer.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? It's very bizarre. I don't know whether it's whoever's supposed to be doing this is not a Manchester United fan, but it hasn't happened yet. Chelsea drew with Arsenal. Fair result, probably not perfect for either of them. Leaves Arsenal and Chelsea both 9 points off Liverpool at the top. And Newcastle beat Nottingham Forest 3-1.
Well, great record for Eddie Howe at Newcastle, has to be said.
Yeah.
He's done very, very well.
Yeah, he has done well. I mean, it was his 3rd anniversary as well yesterday. It's a good way of doing it. And Nottingham Forest, it's only the 2nd game they've lost this season. So when you look at how close it is in the Premier League, you've got Nottingham Forest are 5th, Newcastle are now 8th. But between Liverpool, who are top on 28, Man City on 23, and then only 1 point separates 3rd from 9th. So it's all very, very tight, and nobody, apart from Liverpool, seems to be wanting to take the ball by the horns.
Meanwhile, the Timber Sports Individual World Championship took place on Saturday in France.
In Toulouse. This is kind of like your lumberjacky, chopping at wood sort of business. You know what? Should we just have a look at it and see how it looks? The winner, Nathaniel Hodges. Look at these guys. See, the thing is,
quite hard.
I'd take my foot off.
Yeah.
I would take my foot off there. So you've got to be... So
you mean like chop it off?
I think I probably would. Yeah. I'd take the foot off. Look at this. How do they... So then that's just one of the events. There's 6 different events. I believe that's the underhand chop, by the way. There's the chainsaw. They use chainsaws. This is the chainsaw one. It's just how quickly they can cut through. There we are. But surely anybody can do that, can't they? You just let the chainsaw do the work. There you go.
It's all right unless it slips, isn't it, really?
There's the single buck. I have no idea what the single buck is. Oh, this is the single buck. There we are. So that's just one piece, and then they just chop and chop and chop. So really, it's just chopping. There's just lots and lots of lumberjack chopping, all happening in Toulouse, and the winner is Nathaniel Hodges.
Either of you ever tried to chop a log, a reel?
Have I ever log chopped?
Have you ever chopped a log?
I don't think...
We've got a log
I've ever
splitter,
chopped a
which is
log.
like a sort of pointy thing, and you
Yeah.
get a rubber mallet and you smack the pointy thing and it splits the wood
Oh,
into
I've seen
lots
that,
of
yeah.
pieces, but it takes a few thwacks.
I have had a
It
go
makes my
at-
husband look like a murderer when he's...
I've always...
Scares me.
Does it really?
Yeah.
But it kind of excites you as well, though, doesn't it? So I'd love to do the proper... Have you ever lumberjacked? There, Eamonn?
I'm a lumberjack and I don't care.
Yeah,
And I'm all right.
sleep all night.
I dance all day.
Something all day.
Who is Plutarchos Pouliakis?
I've absolutely no idea. We were going to do him a little bit later. No, he's the marathon. He's an 88-year-old marathon runner. Have we got the marathon runner? I wasn't going to talk about the marathon runner. He's 88 years old.
Yeah.
They have this championship. There we are. This man, he did the marathon, and it's actually in Greece, so it's actually in marathon. It started off at the old Olympic Stadium. 41st edition of the Authentic Marathon of Athens, 6 hours, 31 minutes. Let's not forget that if you do a marathon, the longer it takes you, that's the more time you're on your feet and the more tiring it can possibly be. So these people in their super shoes running in 2 hours have got it easy compared to our friend there, Plutarchos Pouliakis. There we are.
I mean,
That's
I
unbelievable.
couldn't do that at 18,
Absolutely.
let alone 88.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Well done.
And there he is.
Paul, see you again in about 40 minutes' time.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much indeed. How would you like to have Christmas on us today?
Yes, not only do we have £25,025 in cash to spend on a very Merry Christmas, but also shopping vouchers and a GB News goodie bag. Here's how it could be yours. Now, it's Panto season very soon. Do you know who's starring in the Panto in Woking this year?
Well, he's everywhere. He's always... What is he, a dame?
I'm not sure what he is, but Mr. Biggins will be starring in Panto in Woking. But by popular demand, we've managed to bag him back on the papers this morning. He'll be back with Dawn Neeson in just a mo.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Cumbria, the A689 is partly blocked by an accident near junction 44 of the M6 north of Carlisle. The A1 in Tyne and Wear is closed northbound from junction 65 at Birtley to 68 at the Dunstan interchange where overnight roadworks have overrun. It's supposed to have reopened at 6 this morning. Buses replaced trains between Hensford and Rugeley-Trent Valley because of overhead line problems. In Ceredigion, the A487 is closed in both directions between Aberystwyth and Bow Street after an accident late last night. In Pembrokeshire, the A4219 is closed each way off the A40 between Skiddaw and Manarowan after an accident yesterday evening. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking 20 minutes in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Gossiping.
We're making it up as we go along.
Hello, welcome
mind
back.
us.
Nice to see you, Eamonn and Isabel here. This is GB News Breakfast on a Monday morning.
Yes. Shall we take a look at the front pages of the newspapers, starting with the Daily Mail, which is asking when the government will give the armed forces the funds they need after a minister is reported to have raised concerns about commitments there.
The Mirror pays respect to and leads tributes to those who've given their lives and fought for the country as we remember them on Armistice Day today.
Here's The Guardian. It's leading with Sir Keir Starmer heading to Paris to meet with the French President Emmanuel Macron.
Similar front page for The Times. It adds that trade will be a key talking point for
And
them.
The Express says the PM is disrespecting and ignoring a petition handed to him over winter fuel payments.
Well, here with their views on those stories and a lot more, we've got Dawn Neeson and we have got Christopher Biggins. Very nice to see you both.
And you.
Back in the room,
Lovely
Biggins.
to
Have you back,
Thank
Biggins.
you.
It's been a while. Dawn, should we start with you? This is on the front of the Mail this morning, and there's been this backlash to comments made by Darren Jones yesterday, who's sort of Rachel Reeves' number 2, isn't he?
Yes.
Not committing to increasing defence spending to 2.5%.
Well, this has been one
of GDP.
Yeah, this is one of the promises that we were given in the election by both parties, confirming that we would take GDP of spending to 2.5%. Now it seems like it's not going to happen, or there is no timetable for it to happen. Which, given at the weekend the Chief of Defence Staff, Sir Tony Radakin, warned that we need to strengthen armed forces and it's a more dangerous world. It was quite a chilling piece that he wrote for the papers. We do need to actually take this seriously. It's not a joke anymore. And obviously we've got Keir Starmer in France discussing with Macron the future direction of the war in Ukraine in light of Trump's election. And as our Sir Tony Radakin said over the weekend, to not increase GDP spending to 2.5% would get on the wrong side of Trump straight away. Now, we do our bit. There are countries in NATO that do a lot worse than we do. But when you have got countries like Russia and China increasing their GDP spending on defence hugely, we've got to start taking this seriously.
Yeah.
But something's got to give. I mean, what Darren Jones is saying is that to do that, then it has to be taken from somewhere else. Where do we take the money from?
Then they shouldn't have promised it in pre-election.
Well, lots of promises they made they shouldn't have done. I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, this is an extraordinary story because, of course, we should protect ourselves. I mean, it's because I have a belief that the other countries that we are surrounded by can just press a button and we would go immediately in one fell swoop. There would be nothing to save us because we're so close to all these countries that have these incredible functions to obliterate people.
I suppose Labour will say that the mess and the state of the armed forces is a legacy of the Tories who were in power for 14 years. I mean, there was plenty of criticism from the top brass that you're just quoting there, Dawn.
Yes, of course.
Labour coming into power, wasn't there? That they'd reduced the numbers of troops too far, that the investment was too much. They kept talking about efficiencies in the MOD. It seemed to be the MOD that was the first place to be making efficiencies every time they were cost-cutting.
Because a lot of money was pumped into the National Health Service. But we don't have now enough troops to fill Wembley Stadium, and that's quite depressing. I mean, when considering, I think, China increasing their GDP spending on defence to 7.2% this year, Russia are up to 6%. And Trump has said before that, NATO countries need to start pulling their weight. So to get off on the right foot with this special relationship, that isn't actually a special relationship at all, obviously, we actually start to need considering it. The money has to come from somewhere. Where's it going to be taken from? That's the problem.
Well, exactly. Do we all end up paying more in taxes? Probably.
Not probably, yes.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah, OK.
But the thing about Labour is they have no sense of commitment as to how they're going to fund the armed forces, and they certainly do not feel compelled to fund them within the next 5 years while they have a tenure in Parliament. And I think that is absolutely disgusting that they can dodge the bullet, as it were, on this and not do anything.
There's also an extra strand to the whole defence story on this Armistice Day, that this VAT rise on private schools will affect military families, many of whom depend on boarding schools so that the families can travel overseas. They're saying we have a huge recruitment problem within the forces already. This is going to massively exacerbate it. They should be exempt from the VAT rise.
Well, have you talked on the programme about the fact that all the shops are going to, like Tesco's, Marks and Spencer's, they're all going to have a huge bill at the end of the year, and who's going to pay for it?
The customer.
We are.
Yeah.
And it's so huge that I don't know. I haven't seen anybody in the paper mention the figures, but it's so huge that it's enormous.
Yeah, this is the extra national insurance they'll have to pay.
Exactly.
Or people will lose their jobs. I mean, the big companies are saying, well, we're just going to start cutting staff.
Absolutely.
But no working people were hurt in the making of this budget.
Right. I do think Labour have serious questions to answer on this, and they can't just keep pointing the finger at the Conservatives, because if Labour wanted to reverse cuts in the armed forces, they could do that from today.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it.
No, they could.
Let's say they don't care about the armed forces, they don't care about the police service, they don't care about farmers.
Pensioners.
Pensioners, well done, yeah. And it goes on and on and on. So where is all this money being spent, this money that
Public sector.
That we don't have, meaning
well,
pay rises?
Pay rises for anyone in the public sector, with their gold-plated pensions as well.
Why don't they admit that? They're not admitting that. They're keeping that as a secret behind closed bars. I find it extraordinary. I mean, my story is about the pensioners. And I don't know how he has the guts to actually get up in the morning and look at himself.
It's about the winter fuel.
Yes, about the winter fuel. I mean, it is so disgraceful. These people who've paid their taxes for years and years and years. And this is, I would have thought, his big audience. I think a lot of pensioners voted for him.
Yeah. But again, another thing I think we have to face as a country is that we're ageist. And it doesn't seem to be... It seems that if you've served your time, you've paid your bills, you've everything you were supposed to do correctly, you're in some way ageist to give these people benefits that they've earned throughout the years. And that is the trouble. And I do laugh at all these people who talk about the rich pensioners around the country, whoever they are. But when they get to that stage, they're going to find out how rich they aren't.
The thing is with pensioners, you can't go on strike. And you're probably not going to be a Labour voter. But they've also thrown kids onto the bus, haven't they, with the reversal on the university tuition fees?
Yes.
So it's not just against pensioners. I mean, they don't seem to care about youngsters anymore either.
I don't think they care about anybody.
Does make you wonder, doesn't it?
I mean, do they care about themselves? I can't think how they can get up in Parliament and say these things.
Well, I guess they would say they've inherited this enormous black hole, that the government wasn't honest about what the state was in.
Yeah, and they don't have to pay it. They can say what they want about their black hole, but they don't have to pay it. They can put it on the long finger.
Yeah.
Talking of black holes, I mean, the financial black hole in defence spending does come to £29 billion. So there is a black hole there as well, surrounded by black holes.
So where is this money tree? I thought we had one, didn't we?
It's going to throw
So you're saying that there could be another 29, did you say billion?
£29 billion black hole in defence funding.
To bring
funding.
defence services up to scratch.
Yeah, yeah, so... Yeah.
Okay.
Dawn, this story on the front of the FT, explain it to me. It's a bit sort of tax heavy. This is a windfall for a number of big British companies from the London Stock Exchange, including ITV. And this is after what happened, an EU tax ruling.
It is very, very complicated. It's a typical Financial Times story. And basically, it's an appeal against a Brussels state aid clampdown that has forced London companies to collect taxes against the company's wishes. Obviously, they wouldn't want to do this. But it's a very complicated legal story. But basically, the companies that were taking this case have won, and it does mean now that the big British companies, which is good news if you work for these companies, maybe you will keep your job despite the national insurance rate, it's a 700 million windfall. So it's a good news story. It's incredibly complicated, a tax story, but it's a little bit of good financial news, hopefully.
Hopefully, indeed. OK.
Freedom of the press at risk after Donald Trump victory, experts warn. This is in The Guardian, Biggins.
Oh, I haven't got that one.
Oh, well...
Sorry.
Right.
My next one was going to be about the stage review of the audience in tears over a musical story of injustice.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Are you sure that's all right?
Yeah.
Well, this is the post office scandal, and it's so interesting, you know, when these topics come up and suddenly they become a commercial product, you know, where you can go and see it. We've seen two wonderful documentaries, and we are right behind the post office.
Well, so often these horrendous miscarriages of justice are wonderful stories.
Well, they are.
You know, compelling.
They are indeed. Did you see the one last week on television about the girl whose boyfriend was trying to murder her?
I didn't see that one.
It's a true story. I mean, it's the most extraordinary thing. Anyway...
Was it called Until I Kill You?
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. But anyway, this musical is at the Omnibus Theatre in Clapham, which I've never heard of. Anyway, it's got 3 stars in The Guardian, and the audience apparently are in absolute tears. I must say, I've cried a lot on the documentaries because it is so soul-destroying that these people, ordinary people, lost everything.
Yeah.
Some people died.
Yeah, extraordinary.
I mean, it was extraordinary. So I wonder if this will transfer. I mean, it's an interesting review, but it's, as I say, it's 3 stars from Mark Lawson, and yeah.
It sounds like you might be heading to Clapham soon, then, to go and watch it for yourself.
Yeah, I don't know whether I will or not.
I think the one story we both wanted to talk about was Princess Catherine on the front page.
Hold that thought. We will come back with that in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break and more on Princess Catherine after that.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunç Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunç and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror, and I've heard this story so many times before,
yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan,
yeah.
And they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And, yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause, and I just, like, suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh, my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess you still, I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and, looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got Dawn and we've got Chris, and they've got the papers in front of them. And we go to the Daily Express. Dawn, hitting GPs with higher taxes makes no sense, says the Express.
Well, absolutely. And the Express is one of those newspapers that has brilliantly always fought on the side of older people. That's its market. It knows its readership. So this is a cracking story for them. And it is going back to the Labour promise in their manifesto not to touch national insurance, apart from the national insurance that employers pay. But Labour said they weren't going to touch the NHS, but most doctors, most GPs are private businesses, so they don't come under this protection, so they are going to have to pay more in national insurance for their employees, and it will affect practices on pretty much every side, which will affect the service we get from our GPs, which, as we all know, isn't great as it is. So you do have to wonder how much impact assessment was done on this particular tax raid and why GPs shouldn't be exempt. And they should be, of course they should be. And it's, again, the patients who are going to suffer. So this is one of the Express's campaign now, is fighting for older people, which is what it does incredibly well.
Should we talk about Princess Kate? I was just doing a little glance across all the newspapers on the desk here. Every single paper, without fail, apart from The Guardian, has pictured her from yesterday. The Telegraph have gone for the smiliest one that I've seen so far. Most of them, she's looking very sombre and serious. The Daily Mail have gone for one where she looks like she's overcome a little bit by emotion. What were both of you thinking yesterday? Obviously, it's about fallen soldiers, but it was important to see Princess of Wales as well.
Well, I think she made a great effort because it was important, because, A, the Queen wasn't there. And her husband was there, presenting a wreath. And I think it was important that the family were there. But I thought she didn't look very well. I mean, I think it's, everybody worries about her, and I think everyone needs to worry about her, because I think the poor girl...
I think she looked fantastic at the event the night before.
Yes.
So I think maybe it was just a bad night's sleep.
She may have been tired, yes.
I want to sort of be careful not to put more pressure on her. She must be feeling stressed about coming back into... Because everyone will be trying to analyse every inch of her. Is she well? Is she OK? From a place of caring.
Yeah, because everybody loves her.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think that also black is not a good look.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she's
the thing is, she was at the Remembrance, she was at the Cenotaph, so she has to, A, wear black, obviously, but B, look sombre. You don't want her standing there laughing and joking.
And she is naturally so smiley.
She is naturally very smiley, and she looked absolutely stunning on the Saturday night. I think the pictures of her, she looks very sophisticated. She's playing the occasion right, but yes, I agree, she does look tired, but this is a woman that has been battling cancer. She's had a course of chemotherapy. If you've ever loved anyone that's had any treatment for cancer, then you know exactly the effects of that. So I think fair play to her. She looks amazing. I think she's doing a cracking job.
Self-service tills is what we're going to have a debate on the next hour of the programme. Are you good with self-service stuff, Biggins, or do you give it a miss?
I don't like it. I like to be confronted by a human being and put my things through and have a little discussion with them about things. I think there's a terrifying thing at the back of one's mind that you're going to make a mistake and you're going to be held up for having stolen some goods. You know, and that really worries me. I remember years and years ago, I went to my local supermarket and I'd had flu and I wasn't feeling very well at all. And I went and I wore a pink tracksuit. And at the end of my shop, and I'd spent something like £150, and I had in my pocket £200 in cash. And as I went out, someone stopped me, and I thought they wanted an autograph. So I went, "Oh yes, what's your name?" And it was a store detective. And I had to spend 3 hours, 4 or 5 hours in a cell, because inadvertently I'd put some batteries in my pocket. And they said, the police said to me, "Why would you steal some batteries when, A, you've already spent £150 and you've got £200 in your thing anyway?" And it was just inadvertently that I put them in. And, of course, that, I think the problem with what we're discussing is that you think, now, have I checked everything? Have I put something in that shouldn't be there?
Well, plenty of people do. And plenty of people like the self-service setup because they can cheat. For example, if you have to weigh an item and say, "Oh, I'm buying an avocado," but, you know, you can say, "Well, for the same weight, I can get something much cheaper." People are scamming the system.
I've thought about this, haven't you?
We've actually done a story on it before. I've never stolen anything in my life, and I never will. But it does amuse me. Apparently, it's quite a middle-class thing that people are sort of swiping
Especially with those avocados. Yeah, no, exactly. No, the reason I hate them is because the husband always makes the same joke every time we go. You know, the unexpected bag in the unexpected bag in bagging area.
Yeah, it's you.
Item. Yeah, and he always makes a joke that it's me, and it's like,
oh God,
how many times have we heard that joke? But
Well,
no, it's very easy to make a mistake.
Yeah. But Biggins brings up another aspect of all of this, which I think is very important, and that's the sociability of interacting with shop assistants and whatever, and they with you.
Yes.
I think that's very important for everybody all round. But the number crunchers, they obviously don't take sociability into account.
Not at all, which I think is very sad. This is a 20th century thing now, I think, you know, that nobody cares. But it is nice to talk to someone, you know, to say, "Isn't it a nice day? Isn't it a horrible day? How are you doing? Are you feeling better than you did last week?" You know, all those sort of things.
Well, and many of the people that are losing their jobs because of this are lower-paid working-class women.
Yeah.
It's affecting them. And many of the older people that work in our local supermarket who are losing their jobs to these tills do it because they like the company. They like talking to people. They're lonely. We have an epidemic of loneliness in this country, and by interacting with machines, it's not helping.
No, at all.
OK, guys, hold those thoughts, and we'll be back again in about 45 minutes talking again about the stories that are making the news in the newspapers.
Yes, we were talking about how there has been a nip in the air. It's been a bit chilly over the weekend. Let's find out from Ellie Glazier what's likely to happen in the weather this week.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So after a cloudy few days, there is some blue sky on the way as we head through the rest of this week. High pressure still very much in charge of our weather as we head over the next couple of days, bringing us those more settled conditions that we might see throughout today with plenty of sunshine around. We have seen a weather front just sinking southwards overnight, that eventually clearing the far southeast of England, and perhaps 1 or 2 showers just skirting the eastern coast of England as well. But for most of us, a dry and bright day with plenty of blue skies and plenty of sunshine on offer. Temperatures around about average for the time of year, but still feeling very pleasant in that sunshine. As we then go into Monday evening, still just a touch of cloud across the very far southwest of England, but for the majority of Scotland it will be staying dry with plenty of clear skies overnight, maybe 1 or 2 isolated showers just affecting Shetland and Orkney through the evening period. And across Northern Ireland, still staying dry overnight as well, plenty of clear spells here, and across Northern England and Northern Ireland we could see some patchy mist and fog developing during the early hours of Tuesday. For Wales and southern and central parts of England though, another dry night, plenty of clear spells around. Still 1 or 2 showers just skirting the very far east of England, but for most places it should be staying dry overnight. As we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning, that's when we start to see that mist and fog developing across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and Scotland too, as we go into the start of Tuesday. And temperatures overnight under those clear skies likely to be dropping a bit chillier than we've seen recently, down into the low single figures, with a bit of a frost likely across the northern half of the UK to start on Tuesday. So a chilly start for many places, but mostly a dry start. Some of that mist and fog perhaps a little slow to clear across Northern Ireland, but for most of us it will be another dry day. Plenty of sunshine around, still some showers just lingering across the very far southeast of England, these perhaps turning heavy at times. But temperatures will be similar again on Tuesday, around about average for the time of year, so 11 or 12 in the south and 10 or 11 further north.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Cumbria, the A689 is partly blocked by an accident near junction 44 of the M6 north of Carlisle. Train services between Selby and Doncaster are being diverted via Goole because of a points problem. The A1 in West Yorkshire is partly blocked southbound just after the Darrington turn-off, causing queues. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise at junction 1 at Stockport where someone's broken down. Buses replaced trains between Hensford and Ridgely Trent Valley because of overhead line problems. In Ceredigion, the A487 is closed between Aberystwyth and Bow Street after an accident late last night. In Pembrokeshire, the A4219 is closed off the A40 to the southwest of Fishguard after an accident yesterday evening. Trains have been stopped between Barry and Coggan for an investigation, and on the M26 in Kent it's taking nearly half an hour in queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good morning. Today we pay tribute to our fallen heroes, 106 years since World War I ended.
The Prime Minister arrives in Paris to commemorate war dead, becoming the first leader of Britain to attend France's Armistice Day since Winston Churchill.
We'll be remembering those who gave their lives on GB News today as the nation prepares to fall silent at 11 a.m.
Well, the bells of Big Ben are ringing behind me, and in 4 hours we will commemorate the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month when the guns fell silent on the Western Front.
An official royal return for the Princess of Wales as she supports the King and Prince William at the Cenotaph yesterday.
The annual UN Climate Summit begins today, but many are left wondering if another Trump presidency could jeopardise the green agenda.
A GB News exclusive, Patrick Christie gets to interview Boris Johnson. Here's a sneak peek.
But never forget, it was we who controlled it because we took back control with Brexit.
Time to get rid of self-service machines in shops. That is our debate this morning after some customers have complained there's no personal touch to your weekly shop these days.
And in the sport, Ipswich Town win their first Premier League game of the season. At Spurs, at least Ed Sheeran's happy. Good wins for Manchester United and Newcastle. And in cycling, Mark Cavendish wins his last ever race.
After a grey and gloomy start to November, there's change on the way with some sunshine in store for many of us today. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
Hello there, very good morning to you on this Monday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
People getting in touch today saying there's a great, superb portrait of Donald Trump in the papers today.
He looks well there, doesn't he?
I haven't seen him looking
well.
better. I haven't seen him looking better. Looks absolutely great there.
He's much more handsome than I always remembered him there as well.
Can you do the actual, is it just sort of a static impersonation, or can you do the hand actions?
You've got to have your mouth basically like an anus. So it goes very, very tight.
Yeah, okay.
Looks like you got a Werther's stuck in your mouth.
Yeah. It has his mouth
nice.
quite tight.
Very nice.
When he speaks like that.
I know a lot of people that pay good money to have their lips like that as well.
It's all the rage. It's all the rage. Thanks, Coity. We'll have more from you in just a while. But for now, we are reflecting Armistice Day. The Prime Minister is due to be heading to France alongside the British and French veterans, and will be celebrating it at the Arc de Triomphe.
Sir Keir Starmer will become the first leader of Britain to attend France's national commemoration event since Winston Churchill. That was in 1944.
Well, it is a significant moment for both the Prime Minister and the French President, and a show of what some people are describing as a show of European solidarity in the days after Donald Trump's re-election in the US.
Joining us now, former political editor at LBC, Theo Usherwood. Good morning, Theo.
Very good
Theo,
morning.
how significant is this? He would have been invited, this would have been planned. Is it for the attendance, or is it for the talks that will take place afterwards? Which is the most important?
The most important are the talks afterwards. These are going to be significant talks, of course. It's nearly a week since Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. And key to all of this are going to be discussions about what to do when it comes to Ukraine. Thorny questions, of course, for Keir Starmer when it comes to defence. You asked me, Isabel, in the first hour about the numbers involved in terms of trying to meet that 2.5% of GDP on defence spending. At the moment, this year, we're going to spend around £52 billion on defence spending. To hit that target by 2030, it goes up to £87 billion.
Wow.
That's just for 2.5%. If we want to actually meet Donald Trump's target of 3%, then you're talking 157 billion. And of course, the difficulty for Keir Starmer is defence isn't an issue for voters. So at the election, 45% of people said they were most concerned about the economy. Health was next, immigration, as you expect, 26%. But if you want to talk about defence and where voters are, where Keir Starmer's voters are, it's all the way down on 9% of voters thinking it's the top issue. So there's this difference here between what Donald Trump thinks are important and actually what people back here at home thinks important.
Interesting. And the sort of background to all of this as well, the context, I suppose, is that whilst these guys are meeting in France, we're just hearing the readout from this phone call between President-elect Trump and his, I mean, what do you call him, ally, friend, or, you know, what is he, Putin?
So Putin, yes, and we're hearing the readout that, of course, you know, Trump didn't go into the details, but, you know, we understand it was a fairly cordial phone call, and it's going to centre on whether actually that some sort of deal can be done after Inauguration Day.
Just give context. I mean, which other world leaders are taking phone calls with Putin at this point?
None of our allies are taking phone calls with Putin at this point, but I think there's a recognition, and Trump talked about this in the election, that we couldn't go on with what the Republicans called forever wars, that actually this conflict in Ukraine has to come to an end. It started all the way back in 2022, and the argument that Trump has made and the Republicans have made is that if you continue to fund Ukraine, Putin is an enemy who cannot be beaten, and actually some sort of agreement needs to be reached, because at the same time that we've been trying to secure sanctions against them, this was an early move, of course, against Russia to stop it resourcing this war in Ukraine. You've still got China, who are putting huge amounts of money into Russia. You've got North Korea providing troops to Russia. So this is a conflict that, you know, from the Republican point of view, from Trump's point of view, can go on and on and on. And therefore, it's necessary to find some sort of agreement. But will that, of course, mean carving off part of Ukraine? Putin can then go back to his voters in Moscow and across Russia and say, I've got a victory. And then he comes back for a NATO, somebody actually within the NATO alliance, maybe it's a smaller Baltic state, in a few years' time, with the precedent that he managed to secure land, territorial advantage when he went into Ukraine. And that's the problem that Starmer and Macron have got.
So Starmer and Macron together, will they be able to more likely rebuff what Trump is insisting upon than going it alone?
I think what Starmer and Macron are going to try and do is they're going to try and appease Trump, say to Trump, actually, you know what, we are going to, and this is about securing high defence spending. We already meet our target, our NATO target of just over 2% of GDP, but actually saying, listen, we take defence seriously, Europe takes its contributions to NATO seriously. Because if you go to Trump and say, we're going to ignore you, we're not going to do what you say, we're not going to listen to you, it's only going to get worse. The pain is only going to get worse, right? I think that's the broad agreement. Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, made those comments when he took over from Jens Stoltenberg, saying, hang on a moment, we all need to pay our way when it comes to NATO. So what I would expect to come out of this, not necessarily in the next few days, but certainly going into 2025, is that actually European nations contribute more to NATO, and therefore Trump feels that actually, in terms of America being the main provider, it doesn't feel as if somehow that it's paying everybody else, paying for Europe to fight this war ongoing. But actually, I think the crucial issue is going to be how is some sort of agreement brokered? Viktor Orban, the Hungarian leader, is very close to this. With Ukraine, with Zelensky in Ukraine, where actually this war comes to an end.
Theo, we've got to leave it there. Thank you for your analysis on things. Enjoyed listening to you this morning. Appreciate it. And if you've got something to say with what Theo is commenting on, please do get in touch with us and have your say.
Yes, a few of you have been in touch with views. In the last hour, John got in touch to say, I think it's absolutely disgusting that Nigel Farage was not allowed to lay a wreath at the Cenotaph yesterday. As over 4 million people voted for him, this is a continuous lockout of reform, taking part in Parliament, even not allowed on select committees.
Dan says, yes, reform should have been at the Cenotaph yesterday. We were amazed that a representative wasn't there, which brings us to today's poll of the day. Every day we ask you a question and we get your views on it. Today's question is, should reform have been allowed to lay a wreath yesterday at the Cenotaph?
Yeah, we'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned for those. The final result will be announced later. In Martin Daubney's show, we'll get a bit of a preview, probably just after 9 o'clock on our programme.
And for all the latest polls, news and how to vote, gbnews.com/poll.
Now, as we've mentioned, it is, of course, Armistice Day today, and we are paying tribute here on GB News to our fallen heroes.
A 2-minute silence will be held across the country to mark the moment peace was declared in 1918.
Well, GB News national reporter Charlie Peters joins us from the Cenotaph. Good morning to you, Charlie. A poignant day, and there you are at the scene of where those wreaths were laid yesterday by His Majesty the King and dignitaries.
Good morning, Isabel. Good morning, Eamonn. Yes, there are many poppy wreaths behind me at the Cenotaph from Remembrance Sunday, but that experience of commemoration continues today with further reflection on the Great War, the First World War. And I'm happy to say that I'm joined now by Rich Hughes from the Western Front Association. Rich, what's going to be happening today at the Cenotaph?
Well, good morning, Charlie. You're absolutely right. People sometimes fail to make the distinction between Remembrance Sunday and Armistice Day. And every year now, for over 30 years, the Western Front Association has had its annual ceremony here at the Cenotaph. And we commemorate particularly the history and the culture and the comradeship of the Great War. And that's not just history, because there were a set of values at play, I think, in that First World War generation, and we commemorate and celebrate those. And but over the years, as our ceremony has become bigger, it's become a wonderful opportunity for ordinary people, very often with a family connection, to be at the Cenotaph and to be very close to the Cenotaph.
Now, Rich, I grew up with Remembrance Sunday and Armistice Day, but I only learned recently that for a while, Armistice Day lost its place in the British remembrance tradition. It's only been back for 30 years. Can you tell me more about how the Western Front Association helped to recover Armistice Day?
Sure. Well, for many years after the First World War, there was only Armistice Day. And then as time moved on, practicalities, I don't know, the political whims of the time meant that Armistice Day, to some extent, fell away in the main sort of public perception, and Remembrance Sunday became very much established. people still honoured Armistice Day, but in a much quieter way. And about 30 or 40 years ago, the Western Front Association campaigned to bring Armistice Day back to the fore. And if you see today, most workplaces all around the UK will have a 2-minute silence. The Western Front Association played a part in bringing that tradition back, and we're very proud that that is the case.
Rich Hughes, thank you very much. Well, Eamonn, Isabel, it was at 5 a.m. on Monday, the 11th of November, that armistice was signed, but it wasn't until 11 a.m. that the guns fell silent. Some 2,000 men fell between the signing of peace and the formal start of that armistice. We will commemorate them, the millions more who suffered during the Great War.
Charlie, thank you very much indeed. That's amazing to think 2,000 men died in that time. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom.
Donald Trump has spoken to Russia's Vladimir Putin to urge him not to escalate the war in Ukraine. Trump said to have reminded Putin of America's military strength. Throughout his campaign, the now president-elect promised to end the conflict within 24 hours of taking power.
The Israeli government has told people not to attend large events over the next week, including a specific warning to avoid Britain. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said pro-Palestine groups could be planning to harm Israelis at cultural and sporting events. That's after Israeli football fans were attacked in Amsterdam after a match on Thursday.
MTV Europe Music Awards took place in Manchester overnight. The host, Rita Ora, paid tribute to One Direction's Liam Payne, calling him one of the kindest people. The big winners of the night included Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter and newcomer Ray.
Liam Payne was one of the kindest people that I knew. Yeah. And, you know, there were so many ways that we were talking about honouring him, and I think sometimes just simply speaking is enough. He had the biggest heart and was always the first person to offer help in any way that he could.
Let's now say hello, good morning and welcome to weather hostess Ellie Glaser.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So after a cloudy few days, there is some blue sky on the way as we head through the rest of this week. High pressure still very much in charge of our weather as we head over the next couple of days, bringing us those more settled conditions that we might see throughout today with plenty of sunshine around. We have seen a weather front just sinking southwards overnight, that eventually clearing the far southeast of England, and perhaps one or two showers just skirting the eastern coast of England as well. But for most of us, a dry and bright day with plenty of blue skies and plenty of sunshine on offer. Temperatures around about average for the time of year, but still feeling very pleasant in that sunshine. As we then go into Monday evening, still just a touch of cloud across the very far southwest of England, but for the majority of Scotland it will be staying dry with plenty of clear skies overnight, maybe one or two isolated showers just affecting Shetland and Orkney through the evening period. And across Northern Ireland, still staying dry overnight as well, plenty of clear spells here, and across Northern England and Northern Ireland we could see some patchy mist and fog developing during the early hours of Tuesday. For Wales and southern and central parts of England though, another dry night, plenty of clear spells around, still one or two showers just skirting the very far east of England, but for most places it should be staying dry overnight. As we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning, that's when we start to see that mist and fog developing across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and Scotland too, as we go into the start of Tuesday. And temperatures overnight under those clear skies likely to be dropping a bit chillier than we've seen recently, down into the low single figures, with a bit of a frost likely across the northern half of the UK to start on Tuesday. So a chilly start for many places, but mostly a dry start. Some of that mist and fog perhaps a little slow to clear across Northern Ireland, but for most of us it will be another dry day. Plenty of sunshine around, still some showers just lingering across the very far southeast of England, these perhaps turning heavy at times, but temperatures will be similar again on Tuesday, around about average for the time of year, so 11 or 12 in the south and 10 or 11 further north.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Are you officially getting any Christmas vibes yet? Feeling the Christmas music in the shops or seeing the adverts and getting the tingles?
Wee bit early. I always I'm hard on myself that I should get presents in early. I'm an awful one for leaving that later than I should.
I suppose it's your birthday at the beginning of December,
Yeah.
so maybe you get excited about that before you start getting the feels for Christmas. Maybe, or is it...
I don't think I get excited.
Do you
about my
not?
birthday
Not anymore. Another year older. Well, perhaps you at home are beginning to think about Christmas and would really like a little bit of help with your festivities. We are offering you a whopping £25,025 in cash, but
also a very Merry Christmas. There's shopping vouchers, which I think are lovely to be able to spend shopping vouchers. And I know you're supposed to buy your turkey and cranberry sauce and sort of things with that, but I would prefer to go out for my Christmas dinner, have someone else do it for me.
Yeah, and all the washing up.
Yeah, than have it at home.
It's never as good. It's never as good when someone else does it.
But it's pretty good. Put it all together. This is what you get. Now, that's brilliant, where everything is done for you. What we're asking next, self-service, where do you stand on that? Machines that you scan and, whatever, at the supermarket and whatever. Self-service for you, not for you, that's next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, we're talking about going to the shops, and we're talking about when you get there, do you like to deal and pack with things yourself, have an assistant do it, or leave it all to self-service machines?
Yes, well, Eamonn, you like to cause a queue behind you and chat ad infinitum to the person at the till.
I like the human touch. I like that, I have to say.
Well, it is the topic of our debate this morning, and it is dividing people after complaints that self-service is actually making us all much less sociable. So, what about those older people who perhaps head to the supermarket for their only social interaction of the day. Could it leave them feeling ever more isolated? And I suppose that's a fair point.
Well, the question we're asking you this morning and our next two guests is it time for self-service to stop and save our social skills? Here to debate that, money and business specialist Maddie Alexander-Grout and presenter and commentator Danielle Mason. Very nice to see you both. Maddie, first of all, you're not a fan of self-service. Tell us why.
I don't like self-service because I'm neurodivergent, and I find that it gives a massive sense of overwhelm for me. It's the noises, it's the scanning stuff, and it not feeling like it's accessible. All it does is it beeps, and then you have to get somebody to come and help you because either it's alcohol or I personally don't drink, so it's not alcohol for me, but everything that goes wrong at a self-service checkout is massively inconvenient for people who have got disabilities, people who are elderly, people who are maybe not as savvy when it comes to digital products. Not everybody can use computer screens. No. Dyslexic people, people who are maybe not using English as their first language. I don't feel it's accessible for enough people.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. And the other thing about you is specifically you have ADHD, you have autism, and you find this a double handicap then for you.
It is. And there have been many a supermarket meltdown over something that's gone wrong on the self-checkout.
Oh, dear.
But in the same breath, not all neurodivergents actually struggle with self-checkout. Some people prefer them. It's that horrible, awkward small talk thing that you have to do when you go up to the checkout. So, I'm not saying scrap the single, the self-service checkouts. I'm saying have a few options for people because at the end of the day, there are so many people with different brains, different abilities. Disabled people really struggle with self-service because there isn't enough space around the tills. So it's about making things a bit more inclusive for people.
Well, let's see what Danielle thinks, because, it's certainly the direction of travel, isn't it? These are coming, whether we like it or not, and probably eventually there will be no people in these shops. It will just be the machines. So do we kind of have to get used to it? Danielle?
Right, well, for me, I do like a self-checkout, and this is because sometimes when you want to pick up something personal from the shop and you don't want it going down the conveyor belt, it's nice just to pop in and scan that through yourself without having to deal with anyone. It's quick, it's efficient. If you're on your lunch break at work, it's easy just to nip in, run through and scan that product and off you go. It is actually supposed to be more accessible for disabled people because they've got wider checkouts. So it is actually supposed to be better in that way. I understand people want to have a chat with someone at the counter, but sometimes some people just don't want to do that. So it's just easier just to run it through. And if that machine is going off, it's more than likely that you're trying to maybe put more stuff through that you shouldn't be.
What about having the choice? What about having the choice, Danielle, to do either, do it yourself or get someone to do it for you?
Well, I think, you can still have those, if you want to go, I understand, like, for elderly and things like that, then it's probably more better for them to go on those other tills and have someone do it for them. But for the, I don't know, maybe like younger generation and stuff, it's just easier just to whip through, and you actually end up being able to pick up more stuff that you need because you can do it at your own control, your own leisure. It's just easier for some people to do it that way.
It is the way of the world, though, isn't it, Maddie? And you're just going to have to sort of get used to it because, as I said before, it does feel as though, technology is going to be getting rid of these jobs gradually, or maybe not even that gradually.
Well, there's the sense of community. Some people go to the supermarket because it's the only social interaction they're actually going to have for the entire day. Now, I'm not saying those people are right because they are the people that hold the queues up and they can be really irritating. But in the same breath, it's about making sure that everything is accessible. So, what Danielle said about it being more accessible for wheelchair users, I've got several in my community because I run a community for disabled and neurodivergent people. accessible. And the overarming theme was that actually they're not very accessible and they're quite hard to get through, mainly because of all of the people, coming through and the hustle and bustle. It's about having options for people, there being choice. So I'm not saying scrap the self-checkouts, because I actually sometimes the need takes me where I've got to go really quickly. But it's when you need to go really quickly and you scan something and it doesn't beep properly. And that's the annoying thing.
Yeah. But Maddie, I would say I'm a sociable person, and I do like a chit-chat every now and again, which I think is not only good for me, it's good for the assistants as well. And people's social interacting is something that I look at and I say they're going to do away with it. It'll almost become illegal to have a chat on the side to someone and pick up that atmosphere. Sociability in the high street, I think, is important.
It is. And, for the elderly to go and have a chat, I think it's really important. Not saying you're elderly, Eamonn, obviously, but,
Oh, you can have a good chat round the shop, though, round the vegetables and that, if you want.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think it would be lovely if supermarkets actually had, like, an employed chatter to go round and ask people if they were okay.
Yeah.
You could always say no if you didn't want to talk to people, or have like a badge or something that says don't bother me. But I think it's that human interaction, that sense of community, and also the jobs as well. We don't want self-checkouts to 100% jobs away.
Yeah, it's coming.
I wish we had more time to talk to you two, but we've got to be a bit unsociable this morning. But thanks both for your views. Really appreciate it, Maddie and Danielle.
Thank you both. Coming up, a poignant day as the sun is rising over the National Memorial Arboretum. We'll be there live to mark Armistice Day, so stay tuned to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Cumbria, the A689 is partly blocked by an accident near junction 44 of the M6 north of Carlisle. Train services between Doncaster and Selby are being diverted via Goole because of a points problem. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down at junction 29 for the M1. On the A1 in West Yorkshire, there's a report of a problem southbound just after the Darrington turn-off, causing queues. Buses replaced trains between Hensford and Rugeley Trent Valley because of overhead line problems. In Ceredigion, the A487 is closed between Aberystwyth and Bow Street after an accident late last night. In Pembrokeshire, the A4219 is closed off the A40 southwest of Fishguard after an accident yesterday evening. Trains have been stopped between Coggan and both Barry Island and Roose Cardiff International Airport because of an incident. And in Bristol, the A4 is partly blocked northbound by an accident on Portway.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
106 years since World War I came to an end. GB News across all the commemorations today on this Armistice Day. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson, first of all, from the National Memorial Arboretum. Jack, good morning.
Good morning to you both. Well, it was such poignant scenes, wasn't it, at the Cenotaph yesterday with that Remembrance Sunday service and the Armistice Day service here at the National Memorial Arboretum. Preparations underway, as you can probably see around us. Delighted to be joined by the Director of the National Memorial Arboretum, Philippa Rawlinson. Philippa, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, this service taking place here at the Armed Forces Memorial, it's quite special. Tell us about this memorial here.
It really is very special to have our Armistice Day service here on top of the Armed Forces Memorial at the National Memorial Arboretum, because we are surrounded by this beautiful memorial which bears witness to the 16,000 lives that have been lost in service in our armed forces since the end of the Second World War. And on a service where we will be joined by some veterans from the Afghanistan campaign, as well as, we hope, a D-Day veteran. We really are spanning that breadth of service. And earlier in this autumn we did have a service here to mark 10 years since of active combat operations in Afghanistan, and we're joined by many more veterans here saying, paying their respects to their friends whose names are carved on the wall of the Armed Forces Memorial.
It's always quite striking because when you get to part of this memorial, you know, the names are from 2020, they're from there are a lot of recent names that are on this memorial, and I think that for a lot of people attending here today, it brings home the reality that even though it may not be, you know, full-scale war, there are still people that are lost and still give that sacrifice, you know, in the armed forces.
Absolutely. We have dedication of name service here earlier this year. There was only one name dedicated, but it's still one name too many. Carrie Ann Franks was a military nurse and lost her life because of during the pandemic after serving in a Nightingale hospital, not of COVID. But it just really brings home that families are still losing loved ones. People are still putting themselves in harm's way to fight for the freedoms of a country that we enjoy today. And so it really is poignant here, as you say, with over 16,000 names surrounding us, each one bearing witness to the story of the individual behind them.
Philippa, thank you so much for joining us this morning. The words that put it into perspective of how many people have still been lost in combat operations since the end of the Second World War, which is what the names on this memorial mark.
Jack, appreciate it. Thank you.
Do you know why we use the poppy to commemorate Armistice Day? Because of after the devastation in Passchendaele and parts of Flanders, where all of the ground, which had been, you know, highly productive for the farmers in the area, was absolutely destroyed, and nothing could grow in it apart from this abundance of these red poppies. And for lots of the soldiers that were injured, it became a kind of symbol. And a poet put pen to paper, John McCrae, and wrote "In Flanders Fields," and it then became the official symbol to mark Armistice Day. It's an absolutely beautiful poem if you get a chance to look at it today.
I watched yesterday, if you're looking at for films or whatever that sum up World War One, War Horse was on yesterday.
Such a good film.
Have you ever seen the stage show?
I never saw it, but I know the Queen, the late Queen, snuck in to watch it a couple of times, didn't she?
It was superb, absolutely superb. I don't know if it's still on tour or anything, but War Horse is
phenomenal.
Absolutely superb. Magnificent animals. Right, we'll take a break. Biggins, Dawn, Lisa, right after this.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners, Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
This is about pulchronomics, which is the often hidden, often controversial economics of beauty. And there's this guy, he's called, here it says Anil Hammermesh, but I think they've missed out the D, so I'm guessing he's Daniel rather than Anil, which he might be, though. He might be or he might be anal for an Anil Hammermesh, maybe. That's his unfortunate name. But basically, he's looked into how ugliness affects people, and it turns out he's discovered that ugly people are less attractive. And that affects them for the rest of their life. Now, where this does get interesting, and it is worrying because, of course, this is going to lead to the ugly rights movement, ugly pride march down some dirty back street. And but I remember hearing about this at the time. People born in the UK between March 3rd and March 9th, 1958 were part of this massive survey that was done, which was finding about what would happen to them later in life, and it went through a number of different factors. But I didn't know this. The teachers were also asked to rate their pupils on attractiveness.
Yeah, it's a bit pedo-y.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that would wash now, but it was bone structure and where they're symmetrical, that kind of thing.
You should probably really have a committee of at least half a dozen teachers. Take a sort of standardised view across the... You might get a different point of view from the biology teacher, from the Latin master.
You suggest this to a school, and then we can see if we get it going.
It's interesting, though. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but generally speaking, it is understood within sort of psychological, psychometrics and so on, that IQ is the thing that most closely maps your outcomes, generally speaking. But the idea of beauty is the one that isn't discussed. And there is genuinely a theory that this is actually the great determinant of your life chances.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just looking at the front of the papers here, and there is a very... there's quite a few pictures of Donald Trump. And, Dawn, you want to talk about this one front page of the Star. Damon Lewis, the actor, hints orange man baby like a cruel king. Trump is the new Henry VIII.
Just don't tell Melania.
If you were Melania, you'd be very worried, wouldn't you? You'd be hoping that you... Which wife were you? Divorced, beheaded, died. Yes. So, in any case, this is Damon Lewis, who's playing Henry VIII in Wolf Hall, which is on BBC at the moment. And he doesn't specifically say that Donald Trump is like Henry VIII. What he says is that Henry VIII's reformation of Parliament in 1529 gave him more control over the nation. Every whim, he could do whatever he wanted, basically. And doesn't that remind you of somebody in politics today? So it doesn't actually say Donald Trump is Henry VIII, but you put two and two together and you're pretty much coming up with four.
Well, it's not Biden, is it?
No, it's definitely not Biden. No, it's definitely not Biden. So it's basically just a bit of fun. But, I mean, there is a resemblance. They're all three of them are redheads, ironically. Donald Trump, Henry VIII...
Trump is a blondie.
And Damien Lewis. Well, I think it's strawberry blonde.
No, he's redhead. His mother was red.
Yeah, it's got
Scottish blood.
You'd know because you've worn full wig.
Oh, yeah.
And full get-up. We've actually got a proper picture of this. There you go. The Sun have taken this off your Instagram, Eamonn, and there you are on the inside page. Eamonn dons a disguise as the Donald.
I think I'd like you to be President of the United States of America, Eamonn. I think this is it. It's a terribly good picture.
Aye, you have to get the lips right when you do it.
What? Oh, yeah, that's it. Yes. Can you do the voice?
Very tight. Had a stretch, as stretch as sort of could, but it's mannerisms. It's how he deals around people. I've never met him, so I don't know. But he's quite. There's no doubt he's the man who sees himself as the boss, doesn't he?
Absolutely. And it was the Milana business too was very interesting because she was there, but you could tell she wasn't there under her own will. You know, they forced her to go, I think.
Every time I speak to someone, I hear a different version of that. Andrew Pearce on Wednesday was saying how genuinely delighted she looked to be heading back to Washington. Other commentators had said not so. But I suppose if you're Trump, does that make me Melania for a few hours
You'd be
every
a good
day?
Melania.
I'll give it a
Yeah,
good go.
absolutely. I have to
Actually,
say...
there is a resemblance.
Oh, that is the best compliment. I think
I thought she looked gorgeous. I thought, you know, whether she wants to be on that stage or not, I just kept going, oh, my God, that's a lovely suit she's wearing.
I just kept thinking, oh, my goodness, look at the size of your son. Never mind Gary Barlow's
God,
son.
yeah, no, yeah.
I felt that because the last time I saw the son, he was like a child.
He was, exactly right.
And now he's this lumbering thing, you know, which is...
Apparently he's only 6'4", which my grandfather was, but he looked like a giant.
Yeah, he did. He really did.
Well, I mean, Melania's quite tall, isn't she?
And
So I think
Donald,
it's
so
genes.
it's in the genes.
Yes, and children are getting taller and
She
bigger.
has a beautiful sense of style, Melania.
She does. Beautiful suit.
Yeah.
And she's got a great figure. I mean, she's a beautiful woman. She obviously...
With enhancements.
With enhancements.
Let's be fair. Let's be fair.
Oh, a bit of help.
A bit of help never hurt anybody.
Why did you do this, though, Amy? Was there a reason for donning a
I dress up as a lot of people at the weekend. Some weeks I'm John Wayne, you know.
I love your John Wayne.
Do a good Ronald Reagan, you know.
Other times it's Elvis.
Elvis, Johnny Cash.
Great.
Talent.
I get my weekend through.
Right, any females involved in this dressing up at the
No,
weekend?
I've yet to find a Melania, but Isabel says she can.
I'll give it a go. Yeah.
If you get the suits,
One
why
day
not?
I'll come and do my Tom Cruise for you all.
That I would like to see. What have we got next?
Should we talk about Edinburgh University, Dawn? This is inside the Telegraph. Now, famously, Edinburgh is kind of like where the posh kids go that get rejected from Oxbridge.
Yeah, well, evidently.
And they're being told to stop being snobbish.
Yeah, well, this is something that's... it's a report by the Scottish Social Mobility Society. It's try saying that after a drink. And they said they've had 200 reports of working-class students who have been ridiculed or patronised by the posher kids. You know, so this society are now issuing guidance to the more well-off students on how to treat people from poorer backgrounds. It's quite astonishing in 2024 we're even having this conversation, to be honest with you. But they've been told that you can't be working class because you're at university is one thing that the working class kids get there. And they say you are... don't be a snob, and when you meet new people, be curious about their interests and aspirations rather than their backgrounds. This is the guidance for the posher kids on how to treat working-class kids. It's just astonishing. And if you manage to get some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, some sort of a free pass to go to the university, you're treated even worse. It's quite weird that we are having this conversation.
I think there's quite a lot of reverse snobbery in this country, though, as well. I mean, it's pretty much...
Oh, here she goes again. You know, there's no doubt this is a thing, and you being from the class that discriminates against the working class, it is a thing there, and the best way to deal with it is probably violence, I would say.
Right, OK. But it's the accent. I mean, because you've got a very strong accent, and the working class East London Essex accent is often, oh, well, you're thick, obviously you talk like that, don't you? But it's the accent that people are being pulled apart on. So if you talk with a regional accent, then the posh kids, the Isabels, if you like, Eamonn, I'm joking, Isabel, will pull you apart on your accent and go, oh, my God, that's a terribly interesting accent you've got there.
But in my experience, people do the exact opposite, and they will mock the posh person's accent.
But like I've just done.
Exactly. It's just calling it out. You know, basically, we just all need to be a bit more grown up about it.
I think we should get rid of universities anyway and go for scholarships. Much better. They'll earn much more money.
That's the word I was looking for, scholarship.
And, you know, I think sometimes people shouldn't be in universities. I don't think it's for them.
But the thing is, I mean, this university, I'm sure most of them do, it offers lower grade ratings for kids from the poorer areas and sort of like poorer schools. And so people are aware of that. I think, hold on a minute, most of the royals who went to university didn't get the grades that you are expected to get, did they? And you don't get much posher than that, do you?
Exactly.
No, but it depends how you're treated or how you're mocked or if you're included or not, and what discriminates against you, where you're from, how you speak, what school you went to beforehand. If you let these things annoy you then they do. There's very little that annoys me. I always, if anybody discriminates against me like that, I basically have 2 words for them, and
you can't repeat those.
No,
Well, the second one you probably can.
I'm quite rebuff about it. I'm quite, I'm confident in who I am and where I'm from, and whatever, and I'm lucky enough I am like that. I'm not. I don't really shy away and be weak about it, but basically because I basically know what my own brain power is, and I don't need to be graded against somebody else.
But has that confidence come with age and maturity?
No,
you were like that when you were 17, 18 as well. Fair play.
There's a rather sad story of a young boy, very attractive young boy, today in the paper, and he was, going to be wonderful at university. Everything was going well, and then he took a girl or a woman back to his rooms, and they had sex, and then she told everybody how terrible the sex was.
Oh, God.
And he got cancelled, effectively, by their friendship group, and then he killed himself.
But then he killed himself. I mean, that's what you get if you go to university. I mean, it's just the most appalling story.
It's just being mean for being mean's sake, isn't it? It's just horrible.
And then
Trial by peer group.
Absolutely. And she went and told someone else, and it all came back. I mean, it's just awful.
And social media.
And social media.
That's the problem.
I always find, as regards bullying, was just join a bigger gang. That's what I always did.
Yes.
There's no point. You're not going to win this one. So I mean, I always had my mates at school were always the sports jocks, and no one messed with them. You always.
They were the bosses.
They were the boss. Who's going to pick a fight with a sports jock?
No.
Nobody. So.
Were you bullied?
Well, I think everybody goes through. When I joined school, one of the initiation things at school was to stick your head down the toilet and pull the chain.
Really?
My dad tells stories
on
of
your
these
head.
things.
Right, so I thought, I can't let this bloody happen to me. This can't go on. So, you just join a bigger gang, and then you say, yeah, come on, yeah.
And then you started flushing other people's heads down.
No, I wouldn't do that. That wouldn't be my thing, but I do think in terms of protection. Were you bullied at school?
No.
No.
And I could have easily been bullied, but I wasn't. It was fascinating, actually. I mean, I loved school. I had a great time, and I loved all my... I had a particular friend called John Brown, who was very tall and thin, and we used to go on cross-country runs together, and we'd take hours, because we'd pick flowers on the way round. And then all the boys at the other end who'd been waiting hours for us would go, oh, come on, Biggins and Brown. Dear, oh, dear, the 2 Bs.
Are you still in touch with Brown?
Do you know, yes, we have. I haven't seen him for ages, actually, but he was a great friend, and it was just marvellous, and we did wonderful things together, and it was a great time.
It's lovely to be able to look back and laugh.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Right,
Thanks
we
for the
are
moment,
looking
guys.
back and laughing on that newspaper round. Thank you both very much indeed. We'll take a little pause from that, and we're going to go to Westminster now and speak to the Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, who is Gareth Davies. Good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. I suppose we should start with the news. Obviously, it's Armistice Day today, and Sir Keir Starmer has accepted the invitation of President Macron to celebrate it there, the first British Prime Minister to do so since Winston Churchill. Your reaction to that? What do you think that means?
Well, I think it's important that we mark this day, of course, just as we did yesterday, and remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. I think it's right that we engage with our allies to this day, and of course, it's important that our Prime Minister is with the President of France today, and we wish him well with his trip.
And much of this is being made in the papers, depending on which paper you look at. The front of the Telegraph saying Starmer plots to thwart Trump on Ukraine. The suggestion that he'll try to push through these Storm missiles, Shadow missiles, while President Biden is still in power with the help of Macron. Meanwhile, The Guardian sees this as more of an alliance with Europe. Starmer at the French Armistice Day, show of European solidarity. Do you think that he can ride the twin tracks of trying to sort of stay in favour with the Trump administration, or is he clearly indicating that he's going the other route, do you think?
Well, the first thing to say is it's absolutely vital that we remain supportive of Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression that continues to this day. While Russia are paying a heavy price for this illegal invasion, it is absolutely vital that the United States and the United Kingdom work together and face this challenge together. And our Prime Minister needs to work with President-elect Trump to that end, as well as with our allies across Europe. And so I would encourage him to not just engage with Europe, but also make sure that when President-elect Trump takes office, that support continues in the United States as well. We haven't yet seen what President-elect Trump will do. He's not taken office yet, and I think it's important to wait to see what position he does take.
What do you make of the call between President-elect Trump and Putin? No other allies have had such a call since the outbreak of war. We understand that Trump reminded Putin of the presence of American troops in Europe and urged him not to escalate the war. Are you supportive of that call? Do you think that his message was on point?
It's important that the new president-elect does engage with all world leaders on this very pressing challenge of democracy, essentially. And so to that end, it's perfectly reasonable for President-elect Trump to engage with President Putin and to send a very clear message that what he has done is completely unacceptable, it is illegal, and it is cruel to the people of Ukraine, and it must end. And we have to, as the United Kingdom, as I say, work very closely with President-elect Trump and the United States as our key ally to bring an end to this conflict and to ensure that the Ukrainian people win.
Nigel Farage has said over the weekend that peace in Ukraine will involve concessions on both sides and would involve things that the other sides don't like. Do you agree with him? Do you think that there is a possible chance at peace, but it could mean some unpalatable options, particularly for the Ukrainians, perhaps in ceding territory to Russia?
Well, it is undeniable that Russia have paid a tremendous price for this illegal incursion. If you just listen to the words of the chief of the defense staff yesterday, it is remarkable the price that the Russian people, the Russian economy, and Russian troops have paid as a result of President Putin's actions. In terms of resolving it, we've always been clear that we should support Ukraine both with aid for its people, but also military training and equipment. That should continue because, as I say, we want Ukraine to win this war. We want Ukraine to show the world that democracy can conquer these kind of incursions and invasions by illegal action. It is vital that we show that strength of resolve to the Ukrainian people. And as I say, when President-elect Trump takes office, we need to work with him to bring this conflict to an end in a way that benefits the Ukrainian people.
What do you make of the government's unwillingness to commit to 2.5% of GDP in terms of our defence spending by 2030? They've said that they're waiting for the results of the strategic review. Is that fair enough? I mean, from my memory, if it serves me right, you know, your previous boss, Rishi Sunak, was pretty much saying, along with Jeremy Hunt, we will commit to 2.5% just as soon as the economic conditions allow. But then that suddenly changed just before the election when they said, yes, we would commit to it, because I think they were quite aware they wouldn't have to pay for it. Can we afford 2.5% of GDP, or are Labour right to hesitate given the enormous tax burden that they've already given us?
Well, Labour have promised in their manifesto to uplift defence spending to 2.5%. They should honour that commitment and promise to the British people and set out very clearly how they're going to pay for it. At the moment, we don't have a timeline, as you say, to getting to 2.5%. But actually, I'd go further and say we don't have a timeline for the timeline because they've not been clear on when exactly we're going to hear more about when they might be able to meet the 2.5% and how they're going to pay for it. Rishi Sunak, as Prime Minister, set out a clear plan, a costed plan to get to 2.5% by 2030 by reducing the civil service, by reforming the R&D budget within the Ministry of Defence. And we would urge this government to show the certainty to the military that they so desperately need. It's clear, I think, across the party lines now that we do need to uplift spending on our military, on our armed forces, and it's vital that the new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, set out exactly when and how that's going to be achieved.
OK, well, plenty of food for thought from Gareth Davis there, Shadow Financial Secretary, joining us from Westminster on this Armistice Day, all matters military today. Your reaction at home, do let us know what you think about that and all of the issues we've been discussing on the programme throughout the course of the morning.
Right, after the break, after 8 o'clock, Patrick Christie's will be here live in the studio, and he's got a big name interview tonight on his show, and that is Boris Johnson, so he'll be previewing that one next, and we'll have Biggins and Don Leeson back again after 8:30. All to come on Breakfast here in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
The latest GB News travel.
Morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, there's a lane closed clockwise after an accident at Junction 1 at Stockport, with queues from Junction 23 at Ashton-under-Lyne. In Powys, the A483 is partly blocked northbound by a burst water main between Abermule and Garthmill, causing delays. In Pembrokeshire, the A4219 is closed each way for the A40 southwest of Fishguard after an accident yesterday evening. In Bristol, the A4 Portway is closed northbound from Roman Way to Sylvan Way at Sea Mills after an accident causing delays. In Berkshire, the A34 is blocked northbound just off junction 13 of the M4 near Newbury, causing queues. And on the M25 in Kent, it's down to 2 out of 4 lanes anti-clockwise, where the left-hand Dartford tunnel is closed where a lorry's broken down. There are queues towards there from junction 2 for the A2. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning. Today we pay tribute to fallen heroes, 106 years since World War I ended.
Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer arrives in Paris to commemorate our war dead, becoming the first leader to attend France's Armistice Day ceremony since Winston Churchill.
We'll be remembering those who gave their lives. We're doing that today on the programme as the nation prepares to fall silent at 11 o'clock this morning. That's 3 hours from now.
Well, the bells of Big Ben are currently dripping into Whitehall, and in 3 hours they will mark the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month when the guns fell silent.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. I'm live here at the National Memorial Arboretum, where preparations are underway for their Armistice Day service.
An official royal return for the Princess of Wales as she supported the King and Prince William at the cenotaph.
The annual UN Climate Summit begins today, but many are left wondering if another Trump presidency will jeopardise a green agenda.
Plus, a GB News exclusive as Patrick Christie's grills Boris Johnson. He'll be joining us in just a moment with a sneak peek.
But never forget, it was we who controlled it, because we took back control with Brexit.
And in the sport, Ipswich Town win their first Premier League game in 22 years. Good wins, though, too, for Manchester United and Newcastle. In rugby, a bad weekend for the home nations. And Sir Mark Cavendish, wins his last ever race.
After a grey and gloomy start to November, there's change on the way with some sunshine in store for many of us today. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
Hello, very good morning to you on this Monday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Paul Coutts got a firework up his bottom here.
You know what? Still, how long are fireworks going to go on for? My dog still, last night, when was November the 5th? So it started the weekend before, goes right the way through the week.
It'll be Halloween onwards.
Still, and even last night, there were still fireworks.
And there'll be fireworks on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many fireworks. I'm not a fan. I'm absolutely not a fan.
Honestly.
There must be an easier way to do it instead of distressing animals the way they do.
I keep banging on about this, and I know that people are getting bored with it, but there's a way without the bangs. Is that not possible? I know it's possible to do, but there are so many animals that are just terrified. And it happens night after night after night.
I think you have to experience it before people really care about it.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Then they'll suddenly, it's like having your children distressed by them. You know, not that your children are distressed by them, but animals, I mean, cows, horses, dogs, cats, goodness.
How's Hector?
Hector was fine, but there aren't many around us. But I did lose my daughter at a fireworks display on Friday. That was
no.
Yeah. I had that sort of cold sweat panic of, where is she?
Yeah.
And the fireworks finished and I still hadn't found her and everyone was starting to go home. And then I was having that whole moment and then luckily I found her. But
where was she?
Just watching it with a friend.
She was...
She's 6, so it was quite scary. But anyway, all's well that ends well. There you go.
Good. Speak later, Paul. The Prime Minister is spending Armistice Day in France alongside British and French veterans at the Arc de Triomphe.
Yes, Sir Keir Starmer will become our first leader to attend France's national commemoration event since Winston Churchill in 1944.
A significant moment then for both the Prime Minister and the French President, a show of European solidarity in the days after Donald Trump's re-election. OK, let's now speak to Theo Usherwood on this one. Theo, how significant is this today?
Well, I think there's two significant parts to it. Firstly, when Keir Starmer lays a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier alongside the French President Emmanuel Macron. Of course, as you point out, the history of this, you have to go all the way back to 1944 when Winston Churchill stood alongside Charles de Gaulle to mark remembrance the moment the guns fell silent. I think the second and potentially the most significant part of this visit is going to be the bilateral talks between Macron and Starmer. We've spoken a lot, of course, haven't we, about Donald Trump, his election, but I think actually one name that sort of has fallen away is Joe Biden, how important the current president is, because Starmer and Macron would like to give Zelensky permission to use the long-range Storm Shadow missiles inside Russian territory. Now, that would potentially allow Zelensky and Ukrainian forces to score some massive victories in terms of hitting Russian targets, battery stations. But I think what's potentially the danger is that, of course, these missiles could go as far as Moscow. And, of course, Trump, in that call with Putin, said he didn't want to see Moscow escalate the war any further. A suggestion there that once the inauguration happens, that actually he'd be willing to sit down and try and broker a peace deal. But if Biden, and there is a split within the administration about the use of these missiles, was to approve the use, and then we were to see strikes inside Russian territory, that could have a huge knock-on impact. And Patrick's just walked in. He's got a great... we were just having a natter beforehand, a very significant intervention, actually, from Boris Johnson on this.
And we will come to that. But just on, I suppose, you were talking about the role of this interim period with Biden, because reading the kind of direction of travel under Trump, he's made this call to Putin. He hasn't appointed Mike Pompeo or Nikki Haley, who are famously pro-Ukraine, into his cabinet. And we've seen a tweet from Donald Trump Jr. Mocking Zelensky, accusing him of being sad because his allowance will be up soon from his White House daddy. So, that gives us an indication, perhaps.
Yeah, he's the eldest son of the president-elect. Is actually sharing a post from Sarah Palin, who, of course, was previously a vice presidential candidate, saying that Zelensky had 30 days until he loses his allowance. John Healey, the Defence Secretary, out this morning insisting that nothing is going to change when Trump assumes power in the White House. But clearly there's going to be a shift in the direction of travel.
What about this row about this 2.5% of GDP? Over the weekend, the government have been put under pressure to commit to this, and they've so far been saying, look, we have to wait for the results of the spending review. But you were just explaining to us quite how much money an increase of 2.3% of GDP would actually mean to get up to that 2.5% target.
It was a split in the election. Rishi Sunak, when he was Prime Minister, committed to raising defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. That goes from £51 billion this year to £87 billion by 2030. If you actually want to hit Trump's target of 3%, then you're looking at £157 billion. Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, absolutely insistent that this wasn't something Labour was going to set a timetable for, but saying that actually he would hit that target. But at the same time, you've got people like the Chief of Defence Staff, Admiral Sir Tony Radakan, coming out and saying, well, actually, you know, our defence forces need extra money in order to protect this country at a very dangerous time. And that's something that Labour just don't want to commit to, because they've obviously put that extra £22 billion into the NHS. We've had a tax hike of £40 billion. Institute of Fiscal Studies saying you need another £9 billion just to keep spending at current levels into the back end of this Parliament. So to then go and find an extra, £30 billion a year, £35 billion a year for defence spending is not something this government wants to do, especially when you look at the numbers, the raw numbers from polling data going back to the election. It's not a priority for voters.
Yeah. And don't forget the public sector pay rises in all of those equations
£10 billion as well.
Yeah. Small matter of.
Yes.
OK, Theo, thanks very much indeed.
Well, here at GB News, we love to hear what you think, and every day we run our poll of the day. Today we're asking, should Reform UK have been allowed to lay a wreath at the cenotaph, bearing in mind the vote they took in the general election?
Yes, well, we'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day. Make sure you stay tuned for those. The final result is during Martin Daubney's programme this afternoon, but we will have a little sneak preview of what you guys think just after 9 o'clock. And just remember, if you would like to cast your vote, go to our website, gbnews.com/poll.
Now, Patrick Christie joins us now in the studio, and a busy weekend for you, my friend. So, special guest tonight.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for having me on again. So Boris Johnson did a sit-down with me yesterday, hot-footed it from the cenotaph into our Westminster studios. It's a big interview, both in terms of length and the things that he says. It's 45 minutes long, there or thereabouts. I've got a couple of clips from it that I believe I can play to you now. So look, Boris cops it a lot for record levels of net migration when he was Prime Minister. Here's what he had to say when I put that to him on the legal migration.
Now, you can say that the numbers were too high, and I'd accept that. But never forget, it was we who controlled it, because we took back control with Brexit. And in future years, we can say no. We can say we've got enough. We don't need any more.
Part of it because of Brexit. And then I did buzz him a little bit on illegal migration, record levels of boat crossings. And I asked him, I wanted to know if he thought people had a right to be angry about migrant hotels in their local area. So he had a little bit to say as well.
They have the right to be angry about the cost and the public money that's being spent on it all. I think it's nuts. One of the reasons I think the Rwanda policy was right was because you have to show people that they're not going to be accommodated endlessly at the taxpayer's expense.
And just one more little one for you as well. So I couldn't let him go without talking to him about, because he was supposedly booted off Channel 4's election night coverage, right? And he's been quite scathing about the likes of Emily Maitlis and co. So he kind of got stuck in again, really. You said you were in the studio with Emily Maitlis and she started having some kind of breakdown.
She do. Then everybody, they all start. It's like elderly beldames who see a mouse running up their petticoats and they shriek and they jump on the chairs and they call for the smelling salts and the sal volatile and all this sort of stuff.
So Boris is Boris, still, clearly, as you can see. There are some, in my view anyway, quite big lines in it. I think he lets slip, and I do think it was potentially a bit of a slip, actually, about how the war in Ukraine could end. So what Zelensky, who he's great mates with, very much on first-name terms, what Zelensky would be willing to give away in order for the war to end. So that's quite good. I did also put to him that over the weekend it was quoted that the Queen said when Boris resigned that at least that idiot won't be organising my funeral. So I asked him whether or not he genuinely believed the Queen thought he was an idiot. And there's a few bits and bobs as well, you know, net zero stuff. I was asked him whether or not he thought is he just Ed Miliband in a wig, all of this stuff. So there's quite a lot to go at tonight.
I want to hear it all. You're just teasing us with this. So, yeah, this line on Ukraine is absolutely key, because this is something that Farage had been hinting over the weekend as well, that you know, that there is a possible result in all of this, but it will involve uncomfortable decisions on both sides. Is that the way things are going? Very, very interesting. I look forward to that. So 9 o'clock tonight on your programme, that interview. And just on a sort of, you know, professional note, how did he rate as interviewees go? Because we saw him on with Camilla Tominey a couple of weeks ago, and he was particularly ebullient, shall we say, doing his rounds, promoting his book. Every interviewer had the same problem. It was almost impossible to get him to say anything sensible. Yeah. He seemed a bit more forthright with you, or was
it
slippery?
it was a bit different.
Yeah.
To be honest, he only mentioned his book twice, genuinely, and it was when it was actually relevant to what we were talking about as well. So that was quite good, because I was prepared to have to wrestle the book off him and everything. No, he was on good form, and I do think, Jenny, I know our viewers are very split on Boris. Our viewers are very, very split on him, and I can completely understand that. But one thing I will say that I think made it a bit easier is that he actually watches the show. So I think him and Carrie quite enjoy, you know, us here at GB News getting stuck in from time to time. So I think he felt a bit unguarded, and that's potentially why we managed to get a couple of lines out of him, like what he's been speaking to Zelensky about in terms of the end of that Ukraine war. So, no, he was very forthcoming. I mean, there's a quick fire question round at the end as well, which is a bit light-hearted. So if you want to find out what Carrie makes Boris Johnson watch on the telly, you know, then you can...
Stop it.
Yeah, I know, yeah. So there's good, it was good. I think it's all right.
Love Island or something horrendous.
Not quite.
Oh, do you know what it will be? It'll be Chaos, all about the Greek gods on Netflix or something like that.
No, it's not quite. But I, you know, I'm not just saying this. I want people to watch my show. I do think it's worthwhile watching.
We will watch it with interest, Patrick.
I was watching his hair on the cenotaph yesterday, and I thought, wherever he goes next, I hope someone gives him a comb that he said.
He refused his makeup, you know.
Oh, well, I can see.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because most people are like, you know...
Give me it all.
He's like, no, I just want to come in. Just do it. Get it over with. Yeah.
OK, Patrick, have a good show tonight. Thanks for coming in so early. Armistice Day, and we're paying our tribute to fallen heroes. A 2-minute silence will be held across the country to mark the moment peace was declared. This relates to the First World War in 1918.
Well, let's cross live now to our national reporter, Charlie Peters, who joins us this morning from the cenotaph. Over to you, Charlie.
Well, good morning to you both. 1918 was a year with some of Britain's greatest ever military victories, turning the tide in the First World War and securing peace after a devastating conflict. But when the guns fell silent on Monday, the 11th of November in 1918, there was not that great sense of triumphalism. There was, in fact, a feeling of deep sadness and grief that washed over many of the soldiers who were fighting right up to the very end of that conflict, in contrast to many of the colonial wars that the British military had fought in the decades before. But we will commemorate today those who fought in the Great War, and we will also reflect on the sacrifices that many took at home to support the war effort. And Armistice Day hasn't actually been around for all of the years since the end of the First World War. It was a campaign launched by the Western Front Association. It only returned in 1994 after a significant gap when the country decided that all we needed was Remembrance Sunday following the Second World War. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm now joined by Major General Mungo Melvin, who is an honorary Vice President of the association. Mungo, why did the Armistice Day commemoration go away, and what was your part in seeing it return?
The reasons for the loss of the Armistice Day are really all to do with the Second World War. Following the First World War, this was the national occasion on Armistice Day held exactly here. But during the Second World War, as a wartime measure, because they didn't want to stop production, it was deferred to the second Sunday of November. And in 1946, the government decided, with the permission of the King, to make the Remembrance Sunday the national event. And with that, the Armistice Day commemorations of the 11th of November on the day lapsed, and it was the Western Front Association, as part of its object to foster memory of the First World War, campaigned and was rewarded in 1994 with the re-inauguration, and that's why we're here today, 30 years on the 11th of November.
And Major General, you spent most of your career with units in Germany. What was your experience of marking Armistice Day with German soldiers and German veterans?
Well, I think of shared commemoration. I think we all felt, whether we were serving in either British or German or other NATO uniforms, that our job was to remember, first of all. Secondly, if we're possible, to learn from the experience of the First World War. And thirdly, and most importantly, to honour the sacrifice, regardless of which uniform the soldiers were holding.
And General, just in the introduction there, speaking about the abyss of suffering that's associated with the First World War, do you think that the modern and the contemporary understanding of the conflict is useful? Do you think that too many people think of it as just a period of great suffering, that actually this was a victory that we should celebrate in a way?
Well, I think we have to just recognise the harsh reality that winning the peace and not being defeated cost a great deal amount of blood and treasure. Huge effort at home, but huge sacrifice on the various battlefronts of the First World War, and then again during the Second World War. And I think one of the reasons why we should, as a nation, commemorate on this Remembrance Sunday and indeed today on Armistice Day is to remember that sacrifice, but to remember why we did that, to preserve our freedom and the peace we enjoy today.
Major General, thank you so much. Well, the Armistice Day agreement was signed at 5 a.m. on that Monday, the 11th of November. They kept fighting until 11 a.m. The guns did not fall silent until that hour came to be. Some 2,000 men fell between the moment of the signing and the guns falling silent. We will later today commemorate and remember them and the millions of others who fought and perished during the Great War.
Very, very sobering. Thank you very much indeed. Charlie, GB News North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper now. She joins us from Greater Manchester. Sophie, good morning.
Good morning to you both. Well, it's a beautiful morning here at Stone Clough in Greater Manchester. It's quiet, peaceful, serene, the complete opposite to the scenes that those who sacrificed their lives in World War I, for example, might well have seen. But that is what today, of course, is all about. We just heard Charlie then speaking about the armistice, that agreement that was signed on the 11th of November in 1918 that saw those fighting the Allied forces and Germany put down their weapons after a period of such devastation that was World War I. Now, yesterday on Remembrance Sunday, we saw the King lead that procession at the Cenotaph in London, where we saw other members of the royal family and the Prime Minister, other politicians pay their respects and lay their wreaths there at the Cenotaph. But also around the nation, people will have gathered at their local cenotaphs as a community, like the one here in Stone Clough behind me, perhaps because it feels more personal to them to be able to come and pay their respects. Now, the one you can see here behind me was designed by a local veteran, David D'Souza. We're hoping to speak to him a little bit later on in the morning, but he told me that the reason he designed it was not only to commemorate our veterans, both past and present, but also to teach that future generation, those children here in Stone Clough, about the importance of recognising the sacrifice made by our veterans.
Sophie, thank you very much. Thank you.
OK, well, let's take a look at the forecast now with Ellie Glazier.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So after a cloudy few days, there is some blue sky on the way as we head through the rest of this week. High pressure still very much in charge of our weather as we head over the next couple of days, bringing us those more settled conditions that we might see throughout today with plenty of sunshine around. We have seen a weather front just sinking southwards overnight, that eventually clearing the far southeast of England, and perhaps one or two showers just skirting the eastern coast of England as well. But for most of us, a dry and bright day with plenty of blue skies and plenty of sunshine on offer. Temperatures around about average for the time of year, but still feeling very pleasant in that sunshine. As we then go into Monday evening, still just a touch of cloud across the very far southwest of England, but for the majority of Scotland it will be staying dry with plenty of clear skies overnight, maybe one or two isolated showers just affecting Shetland and Orkney through the evening period. And across Northern Ireland, still staying dry overnight as well, plenty of clear spells here, and across Northern England and Northern Ireland we could see some patchy mist and fog developing during the early hours of Tuesday. For Wales and southern and central parts of England though, another dry night, plenty of clear spells around, still one or two showers just skirting the very far east of England, but for most places it should be staying dry overnight. As we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning, that's when we start to see that mist and fog developing across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and Scotland too, as we go into the start of Tuesday. And temperatures overnight under those clear skies likely to be dropping a bit chillier than we've seen recently, down into the low single figures, with a bit of a frost likely across the northern half of the UK to start on Tuesday. So a chilly start for many places, but mostly a dry start. Some of that mist and fog perhaps a little slow to clear across Northern Ireland, but for most of us it will be another dry day. Plenty of sunshine around, still some showers just lingering across the very far southeast of England, these perhaps turning heavy at times, but temperatures will be similar again on Tuesday, around about average for the time of year, so 11 or 12 in the south and 10 or 11 further north.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the great Christmas giveaway now. You doing anything, getting ready for Christmas?
Well, I might start. I'm definitely beginning to feel a little bit festive, but I tell you what, £25,025 would go a long way to make it a very Merry Christmas, wouldn't it?
Very
We're
merry.
also offering you all shopping vouchers and a GB News goodie bag.
Yes. Think of all, dip it into all of that. It is our great British Christmas giveaway. Here's how you could win.
You could.
I think it's time to get some sport.
Well, I think that's a great idea. Who should we get in for that?
Well, whoever it is after the break.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
A Tesco store on a Scottish island has defied locals by ignoring pleas to stay closed on Sundays.
Tesco's has said that no member of staff in Stornoway would be forced to work on a Sunday and that it had received a significant amount of positive reaction to its plans.
Well, let's talk now to the Minister of the Reformed Presbyterian Church, Reverend Kenneth Stewart. Good morning to you, Reverend Stewart. You're trying to keep Sunday special, and if Tesco are going to open up, that means it won't be quite as special for you.
Well, yes, good morning, and thanks for having me on. Yes, Tesco, for some reason, they claim it's not economic advantage, but for some reason they've decided to go against hundreds of years of tradition on this island and the deeply held religious convictions of many, many people, including, of course, their own customers who are really grieved by this decision. We come obviously from the standpoint that a day of rest is effectively mandatory. It's a human right, along with the other 10 commandments which have undergirded our moral and legal fabric in society. It actually enshrines the human right to a day of rest. And of course, in the UK, that's been eroded for many, many years. Incidentally, it's still far more respected on the continent. But for us here, the Sabbath or the day of rest has been very, very important. It's not just what we do, it's who we are. And for some reason, Tesco have decided just to go against that.
And Reverend Stewart, we were actually talking about this earlier, how in European countries, I mean, even in France, which is a secular country, still very few shops will open on a Sunday.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Premier League results yesterday. Talk us through that and lots more. Let's go to Paul Coyte.
Well, Ipswich did well. They've won a game. It's their first win in the Premier League. See, I know it annoyed you saying it's the first time they've won in the Premier League for 22 years, which is true, but it's because they haven't been in the Premier League for 22 years, but they hadn't won at all this season. But they go to Spurs and they win at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
It's a significant win for Ipswich. Of course it is.
Yeah.
But it's a significant loss for Spurs.
Yeah, totally, because you never know. Yeah, it's the most consistently inconsistent side. That's what Spurs are about. It's really bizarre. You know, lose to Crystal Palace, who hadn't won at all, then beat Man City, who hadn't lost, then beat Aston Villa, and then lose at home to Ipswich. By the way, the pink shirts we saw, designed by Ed Sheeran.
Which I think is quite strange for a redhead to go for pink. But
Do you think so?
That's the colour.
There we are. Look, there it is. It's a bizarre. But there you go. But they were the shirts that they wore yesterday. And he went in to see the team and he was at the game, so he enjoyed it. Very bizarre, though. But anyway, good result for Ipswich, certainly. Manchester United beat Leicester 3-0. So even though as soon as Erik ten Hag goes, there you go.
Ruud van Nistelrooy, they've stepped up a gear for him. There's no doubt about it. And you've got to question Ten Hag's tactics. I mean, lots of people would say he just didn't have that sort of foot on the accelerator type of approach.
Yeah, I think you're right. And now Ruben Amorim, the new manager, is supposed to come in today, but the work permit hasn't gone through. So who knows? He can probably go, but he can't coach. So he can just have a look. You know, you can look, but you can't touch is what's going to happen at the moment. Chelsea 1, Arsenal 1, and Nottingham Forest 1, Newcastle 3. I do want to mention Sir Mark Cavendish has retired from cycling and he won...
He's 42.
It's, well, 39.
39?
39.
Oh, right.
We're having our own birthday game and we're ever going to do it, yeah. He honestly, the man is incredible. 35 stage wins in the Tour de France, 17 Giro d'Italia wins. I could go on, Olympic silver, world champion. It was the criterium, the Tour de France criterium, which is in Singapore. But anyway, he won.
But your body, after being, 40 years of age, 39, 40 years, your body must get used to that or expect that level of endurance and then just to stop.
Exactly.
Must be strange.
I find that once I stop, I may have that problem. Should we hear from Mark Cavendish? Sir Mark, this is what he had to say yesterday.
Quite emotional, actually. I realised in the last 5 laps was the last 15 kilometres of my career. I'm so proud to win the Tour de France Prudential Singapore Criterium as my last professional race.
Incredible, and 39, and it's a sprint finish. So all these youngsters around him and still manages to win.
Wow.
Magnificent.
OK, let's talk tennis now.
Ah, yes.
This is quite controversial, this. Tell us.
Right, Barbora Krejcikova, who is the Wimbledon champion. Now, if you remember, I think we've got a picture of her. She has, this is quite important, the fact that the way she wears her hair and she sweeps it all back with a ponytail at the back. So obviously, there we are. So there's Barbora there. Now, she said that she's criticised a journalist's unprofessional commentary. Now, this is something that happened on the Tennis Channel on Friday. Now, there's a man called John Wertheim. Now, he was on Zoom. He wasn't expected to be on at that point, and they crossed over to him, and this is what happened.
What do you think I am, Barbora Krejcikova? Look at the forehead when Krejcikova and Zhang take the court.
Is that a huge deal? He's gone because he's on there just going, hey, look at the forehead. I look like Krejcikova. A whole story. What do you feel,
I think
Lacey?
it's unnecessary, harsh.
But
she's speaking as a woman with a big forehead. That's why she's sensitive.
He calls me flathead all the time.
But it was off.
What did he actually say? I couldn't hear, but what he actually
He was saying, just referring to her forehead.
No,
instead of her forehand.
listen, he's on Zoom. He didn't think he was on air, and he's gone, hey, well, and he's gone, look at my head. And from someone with a large forehead. I know what it's like. So he's gone, look at my forehead. I look like, Barbara Krejcikova. And so then she's now said, you may have heard about the recent comments on the Tennis Channel. It's all about my appearance rather than my performance as an athlete who's dedicated herself to this sport. It was disappointing to hear this type of unprofessional commentary. It was just, I find. And anyway, he's now been taken off the air for what he said, and he's now apologising.
What do you think of that?
A little too much?
I agree with her. I think back off the forehead comments, people.
Okay, I didn't know.
She can't do anything about it, She's got a big forehead.
But do you think there's not part of you that would go... But the thing is...
If it was funny... I mean,
firstly, I don't think she's got that much of a big forehead. It's just because her hair was pulled back.
Had a funny quip, and that would have been much cooler.
Yes.
She got a bit prickly. But I understand why. It's a frustration that women's appearances get commented on all the time rather than
everybody's
their job.
appearance.
No, but women do get it more than men.
No, if I went out in tennis shorts, now, all people will be talking about is my appearance. So I don't get all this, it's about women all the time. It's not about women, it's about if you're different in some sort of way. And the thing about her, there's nothing interesting about her, maybe except her forehead. So...
Well... A little harsh.
Won Wimbledon last year.
She won Wimbledon, but she's a great tennis player.
Who knows she's won Wimbledon? That's the thing. I don't know her name. She's Wimbledon champion. I did find it amazing that I have no clue that she's the female champion.
But the thing is, it was saying about, the commentary should be about... It was just off the cuff, just happened to mention it. Oh, look, my forehead. She doesn't have a big forehead. It's because she wears her hair, and it's not reflecting on her tennis.
And he was being self-deprecating, which I didn't hear from that clip. So he was, I suppose, in solidarity with her.
Can we just
I think
a little?
Lighten up.
Yeah, lighten up. Maybe just respond with a quip rather than...
Yeah, just say, you're an idiot. He'll put his hands up and say, I didn't mean anything by it.
There you go.
Move on. There you go.
Nothing wrong with a big forehead, that's all I'm saying.
I agree with you entirely.
Some people
means you're extremely clever,
Some men's foreheads grow over the years, don't they? Just get bigger and bigger and bigger as the...
I do know people like that, yeah. I saw someone in the mirror very similar the other day.
I love your head.
Ah.
It's lovely.
I forgive you now.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Please, everybody, feel free to look away at this point.
OK. We'll take a break there. Still to come. We're out and about as commemorations for Armistice Day get underway next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Murray, the A96 is closed in both directions at Forres after an accident causing queues. Train services between Selby and Doncaster are being diverted by a ghoul because of a points failure. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, there's a lane closed clockwise at Junction 1 at Stockport after an accident. There are long delays with queues from Junction 23 at Ashton-under-Lyne. Buses replace trains between Hensford and Rugeley-Trent Valley because of overhead line problems. In Pembrokeshire, the A4219 is closed each way for the A40 southwest of Fishguard after an accident yesterday evening. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking around half an hour in westbound queues towards the M25 because of roadworks, and there are also clockwise delays on the M25 towards there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, it is, of course, the 11th of November, Armistice Day, and that's a time to remember those brave souls who sacrificed their lives for our freedom.
Now, here at GB News, we'll be bringing you live coverage of commemorations throughout the day. Culminates at 11 o'clock this morning. Let's go to our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson. Jack, you're at the National Memorial Arboretum. Well, what's going on there?
Well, preparations still underway here at the National Memorial Arboretum for that Armistice Day service. We've just, in the break there, been sitting through a fantastic rehearsal for that service. But I'm delighted now to be joined by Rachel Smith, who's the Head of Learning and Participation here at the National Memorial Arboretum. Rachel, tell me a little bit about what your role is here.
Yes, so we welcome around 20,000 young people a year to site, and I'm in charge of the formal and informal learning programme, the family programme, the heritage and exhibitions programme, and generally passing on that baton of remembrance to future generations.
I mean, recent polling has seemed to suggest that Gen Z, only 65% maybe feel that remembrance is important. How maybe does your role come into explaining to maybe younger people why remembrance is important, why we do these commemoration services every year?
Yeah, I think our role is really important in ensuring that we're making remembrance relevant to that younger generation. So we're ensuring we're using different methods to communicate those messages. For example, arts and culture is a really powerful way of kind of sharing stories of remembrance and encouraging people with that act of remembrance. So using poetry and music and really bringing remembrance to life.
I mean, you mentioned music there. You're also part of what's called the Talent in the Ranks programme. So explain to us a little bit about what that is and how that supports veterans.
Yeah, so the Talent in the Ranks programme is an artist development programme, and it's working with our poet-in-residence, Dan Simpson, and our associate partners, Black Voices. And essentially we're working with veterans, serving personnel and military families for them to unpack their stories through the power of music, songwriting and poetry. So we're taking them on a journey for them to create original pieces that are performed at different services. We're recording them in the studio, so it's really a real good opportunity for them to really talk about some difficult themes, explore using words and poetry and music to really tell those stories.
Rachel, thank you so much for joining us this morning. As I mentioned, preparations still underway here at the National Memorial Arboretum for that Armistice Day service a little bit later on this morning.
Jack, thanks very much indeed.
And if you're attending an event today, hope it goes well for you. The weather seems pretty good, which is nice. Still to come, we're going to take a break and we're back with what's in the newspapers after this.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No.
Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up,
It's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about
Really?
that.
What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I
It's like-
know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with
Yeah,
me.
you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joining us now to go through what's making the news in the papers, Dawn Neeson and Christopher Biggins. What are you laughing at?
never contain Biggins.
I thought we were in the conversation before we went on there. Don't tell anybody what the conversation was. Right. Got 8 o'clock. Right. Chris, we're starting with you. Right, Shane Ward. I did see this on Strictly on Saturday night. I don't normally watch it, but I did see his performance, as it turned out, and he was very, very good, and he had a lot of support from the audience.
He was very good, and, you know, watching it, as I have been doing, it's fascinating to watch because, you know, you get involved and you think you know about dancing, which, of course, I know nothing about dancing, but he was absolutely brilliant. And he did a wonderful dance. It was very emotional and very meaningful, and he was up against Win. Now, the problem is, at the moment, everybody, I think this is a particularly strong year, everybody is wonderful. And Win is wonderful. But the two, it was obvious who was going to win in our house. And suddenly, Win won. And Craig and Motzi voted for Shane, and then Anton voted for Win, and then the deciding vote came from Shirley, and she voted for Win, and we were all amazed.
Who is Win? Is he the Welsh fellow?
He's the singer.
Go compare adverts.
Yeah. And he's very good.
He was also involved in that whole hoo-ha a couple of weeks ago.
That's right, the touch.
With
the arm
put his hand round.
But I just don't understand, because there was no comparison in this particular week. And you think to yourself, what's going on? You know, the judges...
it was a public vote got him through, was it?
It was the public... He was voted... The two of them, Shane and Win, were the two lowest scores.
Can I ask you, because I saw a bit of it on Saturday night, and not a lot, because other things were going on, but Pete Wicks seemed to be the judges... I mean, everyone was beside themselves over his performance. I didn't think it was...
Well, I'm not a fan, so...
I didn't really understand.
No, I didn't understand it at all. I thought
there was a lot of emotion and sentimentality with it.
But was that real?
But it was in tribute to his grandmother, wasn't it, who had passed
They didn't
away.
dance very well. But, I mean, let's be honest here. They know who they want to win. And they have favourites, and I think they're encouraged.
Do you want to
I'm afraid that came through last night.
Is it a young girl?
I think it's going to be the comedian chap. What's his name? Chris.
Oh, right,
Chris
okay.
McCall. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, he did the equivalent of the deaf girl. You know, he did a part of the number with all the lights out.
Oh wow!
And continued on, you know, just to show us that he was what it was like to be blind. And
I mean, he is very good. He's a very good dancer. He's also very funny and seems quite sort of like humble about what he's doing. But
I quite enjoy some of his quips as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Which are always good. I
I
think it's incredible that anyone can dance and not hear the music. Every time I watch her,
she's good though.
Remind me her name. I'm so sorry, I forgot. Anyone? Terrible.
Yeah.
But every time I watch her, I think beautiful dancer. How on earth can she dance so musically.
I know.
I not hear it. Well, I know how, but I don't get it.
No,
you know?
I don't. Amazing.
I like the girl, and I think she could win, who played Miranda's friend.
Oh, yes, she was fantastic.
She is wonderful. That thing they did, that sort of
What was
cartwheel.
the song? It was all a tribute to her role in Miranda, where she would say, "Simply the best," was it?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
and I think she's wonderful. I think she's a non-dancer.
But she danced like that on week 1 for a non-dancer. That's very impressive.
I think they were harsher on her, though, than on Pete Wicks. And she's actually better, I think.
No, there's something goes on, I think, with that show.
I think
Dawn, what's going on with robots? We spend a lot of our time worrying about how AI will subjugate humanity, but what if the real problem is the reverse, meaning what?
I love this
is front
story.
page of the Times.
Yeah, how can we help when the robots get depressed? This is a new report. It's a serious report, and it's this comment is from a philosopher at New York University, so that we need to start taking the question of sentient AI seriously, as in robots that can think and feel. And they say we're not prepared for this because AI now basically means we have robots programming robots, meaning we have no idea what any of them are doing. They're all far more intelligent than us. But we have to start being prepared for them, rather than just doing the mechanical stuff, to actually have emotions like we do. But I don't know if you remember, about 18 months ago now, there was a story about a programmer who was working for one of the big AI companies. And he just jokingly asked the chatbot thing he was working on, he goes, "What scares you?" And the machine answered back, "You turning me off." Now, I'm sorry. I think we've all seen that film. It doesn't end well, does it? I mean, they are already thinking and feeling, and they're going to take over. Come on, let's be honest.
I agree. I hate it.
What
is the world going to look like, not only in 100 years, but in 50 years?
Well, you had that brilliant debate about the tills in supermarkets already being automated. That's a tiny, weeny start of it. I know.
I would quite like the idea of having one at the home just to do the odd jobs.
Yeah, but that's because you're boss. What happens when they're boss? When they think better than you, they make better decisions than you, they don't want you involved.
Oh, yes, I hadn't thought. Yes, you're right. That's not so good. Yeah. But I do. And if I won the lottery, I would immediately have at least 10 servants. Because I think that AI be employing people.
We're waiting on you. It's just such
I totally agree with Biggins. People talk about what they do with their money. It's easy. You get someone to cook for you, you get someone to clean for you, you get someone to drive for you.
Absolutely.
And there's 3 jobs filled already.
Yeah, and it's a joy to have someone in the house. You know, my partner Neil would hate it. But I don't know what's going to happen when we do win it, because it's going to be a terrible row.
You want somebody to have their own room or whatever downstairs or upstairs that you can press a bell and say, you're summoned, and then you can dismiss them again.
My ideal would be to live in a hotel.
Yes.
That would be, because you get everything, clean linen every day and towels and all that done. And then you ring up and you say, I want eggs and chips, please.
Yes.
You know, and it comes up 10 minutes later, you know, beautifully served.
It's basically as if you wish you were still at home with Mummy, dear.
Yeah, well, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah. You're on, Eamonn.
Sounds good.
Well, lots of very, very rich people do live in hotels, don't they? And get everything done for them.
Margaret Thatcher famously died in the Ritz, didn't she?
I was there the night she died.
Oh, were you?
Were you?
Yes,
Are you linked to
You
that
weren't
in any
responsible
way?
in any way.
I tell you an interesting story. Helen Worth from Coronation Street got married, and we went to the wedding, and then the reception was at the Ritz, and because I know the manager there, and I was told that she was upstairs dead that day.
Oh my goodness!
And in fact, she did die that night. And the Barclay brothers, I think she was there for about 4 or 5 months. You know, they looked after her, which I thought was a wonderful thing to do. And it's such a marvellous hotel anyway. I mean, I think that's the one I'd like to not die in, but, you know, be looked after,
Yes.
you know.
Till your dying days.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look, we're going to bring the curtain down on you two right now. Just don't know for how long, but we'll take a break and we're back with the government minister right after this.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Murray, the A96 is closed in both directions west of Forres after an accident causing queues. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, there's a lane closed clockwise after an accident at junction 1 at Stockport with queues from junction 23 at Ashton-under-Lyne. In Nottinghamshire on the A52 on Briarclough Way, there's a lane closed southbound where someone's broken down between Bramcote Island and Deep Bardales interchange. Buses replaced trains between Hensford and Rugeley Trent Valley because of overhead line problems. Pembrokeshire, the A4219 is closed each way off the A40 southwest of Fishguard after an accident yesterday evening. And on the M25 in Essex, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise. A lorry's broken down at junction 28 for the A12. There are queues towards there from junction 29 for the A127. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's a need.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We cross straight to Westminster and say good morning to the Minister for Veterans, Alistair Cairns. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Can I ask you about this decision by Sir Keir Starmer to head to Paris today and spend Armistice Day, the first British Prime Minister to do so in France since 1944, since Winston Churchill. It's been reported in some of the press as a pointed show of European solidarity. Interesting choice of action to do, isn't it, given the President-elect, and he's famously thin-skinned and possibly won't look kindly on this, will he?
Well, I think the President-elect will understand this as Armistice Day, and remembering those that have served, those that are still serving, and those that are around the world currently on operations. So I think it'll be absolutely in keeping with tradition. But to do it the first time since Churchill is a big statement. I think that's really powerful. And it talks to us united in remembering more than anything else.
Depended, Alistair, on being invited, or is that decisions taken by administrations here not to go?
Sorry, you have to say that question again. You cut off at the start.
Is that to do with being invited to those commemorations, or is that to do with decisions at Downing Street not to go?
Well, I think going out there makes absolute sense from my perspective. The war was fought in France, so being alongside the French to remember those that have fallen is fantastic news. And I fully support it. I had the privilege yesterday of marching for the first time in the front rank of veterans past the cenotaph. And it's a moment for this country to reflect and remember the sacrifices of so many people who laid down their lives to protect the freedoms we enjoy. So the PM going over to France is a good thing to stand along the French and remember the sacrifice that took place.
The only reason that he's gone over there. I mean, he's there also very much to have these talks with Macron about ways in which they can potentially, you can look at it two ways, either see it as support Ukraine or, as the Telegraph are reporting it this morning, thwart Trump. And that means boosting that weaponry ahead of Trump coming into power in January.
Well, there's lots of speculation. The reality is this country is absolutely committed to supporting Ukraine and will continue to do so. The speculations around the discussions are exactly just that. But working together with our European allies to support Ukraine is absolutely essential. We've got to remember, and interestingly, on Armistice Day, there are 1,500 casualties a day between Ukraine and Russia, 2,000 odd kilometres from our capital city. And that's worth remembering. By the time we've had this interview, there's already been 300 to 400 casualties. And so discussing that with other world leaders is absolutely essential as we move forward.
I do understand that, Alistair, supporting Ukraine, but a lot of people will look at you and say to you, why aren't you supporting your own country, your own troops? Because people will look at this review that you're having into armed forces spending, and it's not going to get to the desired funding level that it should be at, and maybe not even before the end of this parliamentary session.
Yeah, so Eamonn, first of all, I'd say I've done 24 years in the military, so I'm fully supporting our armed forces. This government is also supporting the armed forces by putting up defence spending just this year. But we've just got to follow a bit of process here. Form follows function, Eamonn. So let's work out the function during the Strategic Defence Review, how we're going to fight, do we need different kit and capability, and then we'll work out the form and the funding that needs to follow.
What do you think we do need? You know, a lot of people, they're talking about, you know, whether that spending, whether it should be funded at 3%, 3.5% or higher. There's no doubt, obviously, it is going to take that amount of funding. Even that won't be enough. But surely speed is of the essence here as well.
Speed is of the essence, but it's also bang for buck. We don't want to chase the wrong funding lines. If the Strategic Defence Review tells us we need to be equipped or trained differently to fight the next character of conflict, then that needs to be reflected in the funding. I would say, I'll just take our eyes out east again. Look at the innovation taking place in Ukraine today. You know, drones are dominating the battlefield. You know, the SDR is going to come out with some capability decisions and choices about change. We need to change at the pace of relevance and make sure the funding follows. So what I would say is we've got to sit back and think about how we're going to fight before we rush to spending money.
Alistair Cairns, you were talking about the casualties just during the period that we're talking this morning in Ukraine, and the numbers of people on both sides, you know, losing their lives in this bloody war. What did you make of the fact that President-elect Trump had this call with Putin last night? Is that something that Sir Keir Starmer would do himself? I mean, I know that no other allies have had conversations with Putin since the invasion. And I also want to ask you about comments that were made over the weekend by Nigel Farage, who said that peace in Ukraine will involve concessions on both sides and would involve things that other sides don't like. Do you agree with that? And do you think that there is a world with Trump in power in the United States where we could see a chunk of Ukraine being handed to Russia, and would you support that?
So first of all, say, you know, the discussion took place. I think Trump was pushing Putin to ensure this conflict doesn't escalate, and it's within Trump's gift to speak to Putin if he so wishes. What I would say, there's only one individual responsible for this conflict, and that is Putin, and that illegal invasion is resulting in hundreds of thousands of casualties. The other piece I'd say to Farage is it's not down to him to decide in any way, shape or form. It is down to the Ukrainians to decide on the future of their country. And I think we would reflect really badly on anyone else telling us about our country and what we require. It's down to us to decide for our country and indeed Ukraine to decide their future. And I think we've got to be really strong on that.
Alistair, it's fascinating listening to you. I watched a documentary recently about how the war is being fought in Ukraine, and you're absolutely right as regards, say, new technology like drones. Frightening, absolutely frightening that these have replaced human beings in what they do and how much they control of the sky and the areas that they're patrolling.
So I'd say three things. I'd say this is like a machine gun moment for the Army, a submarine moment for the Navy, and a jet engine moment for the Air Force. And I think it's changing the entire character of conflict to the point of where we could argue it's about supporting technology in the field rather than the individual. And that's why the SDR is so critical as we move forward, because I think this is a moment in warfare where we'll look back and see the character of how we fight wars has absolutely changed.
OK, Alistair Cairns, Minister for Veterans. We have to leave it there. Thanks very much for your time this morning.
Good listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Today we pay tribute to our fallen heroes, 106 years since World War I ended.
The Prime Minister has arrived in Paris to commemorate war dead, becoming the first leader to attend France's Armistice Day since Winston Churchill.
We'll be remembering those who gave their lives on GB News today as the nation prepares to fall silent at 11 a.m.
On the 11th hour of the 11th day,
of the 11th month, the guns fell silent. And today and this morning at Whitehall, they will do so again as people commemorate the Great War and those who fought in it.
When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. Here at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire, an Armistice Day service will be taking place later this morning.
An official royal return for the Princess of Wales as she supports the King and Prince William at the Cenotaph yesterday.
The annual COP UN Climate Summit begins today, but many are left wondering what this could mean with the Trump presidency. Could it jeopardise the green agenda?
The GB News exclusive, Patrick Christie's grills Boris Johnson. Here's a sneak peek.
But never forget, it was we who controlled it, because we took back control with Brexit.
After a grey and gloomy start to November, there's change on the way with some sunshine in store for many of us today. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
In a couple of minutes, I don't know what's happened in a couple of minutes, but anyway, it's Monday morning. This is GB News Breakfast. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Of November, this is Armistice Day. We are paying our tribute to fallen heroes.
Yes, a 2-minute silence will be held across the nation to mark the moment that peace was declared in 1918.
Well, GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, let's go to him live now from the Cenotaph in London.
Well, good morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Isabel. Yes, it is going to be a commemorative moment here at 11 a.m. By the Cenotaph as the Great War and those who fought in it on all sides are commemorated. We are expecting a solemn service and, of course, that 2-minute silence on the 11th hour, as it was on Monday, the 11th of November, 1918. And in fact, armistice was signed at 5 a.m. on that day, but and the 6 hours that followed, some 2,000 men were still fighting and were killed in that conflict. The last man shot and killed just within minutes of the guns falling silent. It was a dramatic and tragic end to a conflict that is seen by many as just an abyss of suffering. 1918 was also a year of great military victory for the British Army and its associated forces, overcoming an appalling conflict and achieving victory on the continent. With plenty more to reflect on that, I'm now joined by Lady Lucy French. You are the great-granddaughter of Sir John French, who led the British Expeditionary Forces in 1914. What does it mean to you to commemorate this event as we do each year?
For me, it is incredibly important. It's vital that we do continue to remember, that we do fall silent at 11 o'clock. It's part of humanity. And the instant that we begin to forget, well, I think we're all in trouble.
Yes, and in my view, your great-grandfather's a national hero, as are many of the generals who devised and led that conflict and led Europe away from tragedy. But for so much of the contemporary feeling about the First World War, it's seen as sort of lions led by donkeys and just an appalling attritional suffering. How has that been to reflect on in this modern understanding of the Great War?
I think the centenary of the First World War did an awful lot to sort of dispel that myth.
Right.
I certainly know that my great-grandfather very much led the charge. He loved his men and they loved him. My dear aunt, used to take the old contemptibles back to Ypres each year. It was a hugely meaningful time to reflect, and I think we cannot judge what happened before. It was an unprecedented war. There had never been a type of warfare like that seen before.
Yes. Armistice Day hasn't always been around since 1919 when it was first commemorated. It disappeared for almost 50 years after the Second World War, when Remembrance Sunday sort of took pride of place as the capture for all commemoration. That returned in 1994. Do you think it's important that the Great War itself, and the First World War in particular, is remembered in this way?
Yes, I mean, I feel very, very strongly that we continue to remember and we continue to reflect on the centenary of the First World War and what has gone before. I think in the face of geopolitical tumult today, we must learn the lessons of all those that gave their lives over 100 years ago.
Lady Lucy French, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Well, Eamonn and Isabel, we are expecting crowds to gather here solemnly as they did yesterday for Remembrance Sunday, for this specific commemoration of the Great War. By many understandings, it is possibly the greatest civilizational catastrophe in our modern history, but it was also a great victory. It is something, in a way, to celebrate that triumph, but also to remember the millions who fought and were killed during the Great War.
Well said. Charlie, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's cross to our GB News West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson. He joins us this morning from the National Memorial Arboretum, where simultaneous commemorations will also be taking place. Jack.
Good morning to you. Well, we've come over to the Naval Services Memorial, where you can see around us the field of remembrance that's been placed here at the National Memorial Arboretum. Thousands of poppy crosses laid here as part of this remembrance period. But I'm delighted now to be joined by Admiral Sir Trevor Saw. Thank you so much for joining us, former Commander-in-Chief Fleet of the Royal Navy. I mean, tell us a little bit about your own service.
My first part of my service was in submarines. So I was commanded a diesel submarine, then a nuclear submarine. And the second half really in surface ships, so 2 surface ships command, including Invincible, and then high levels of defence. So, as you say, I ended up as the Commander-in-Chief of the whole of the Royal Navy and the NATO Maritime Commander, running all NATO operations.
I mean, in this period of remembrance and with this Armistice Day service today, I mean, what for you is important about remembrance, and what maybe do you remember at this time of year?
I think the key is about remembrance, really. Clearly today, Armistice Day, we're commemorating the First World War, but I look back to my own career where we had the Falkland Islands conflict and then Afghanistan, and I think of friends and colleagues as well that I lost. So remembering is not just focusing on the 2 world wars, but actually the 50-odd conflicts that have happened since the end of the Second World War.
Because this year does feel very personal for a lot of people, because it is 10 years since the end of combat operations in Afghanistan. Have you sensed that as well?
Yes, it is. And, you know, with nearly 450 people killed in Afghanistan and so many injured as well, it lives on almost every day for many people, not just those affected, but their families and their friends as well. So remembering those people is really important.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning here at the Naval Services Memorial at the National Memorial Arboretum. That Armistice Day service gets underway a little bit later this morning here in Staffordshire.
I appreciate it. In studio, we're joined now by the political commentator Theo Usherwood with his view on what's going to happen today. So we have this meeting in Paris with President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer. What's your take?
I think it's going to be it's a significant meeting, of course, and it's more significant given what happened in that US election that was won by Trump. I thought it was interesting you interviewed Alistair Cairns, the Veterans Minister, and there was 2 bits that stood out for me in that interview, which I thought, firstly, it was a good interview, actually. I thought, firstly, he wouldn't be drawn on the spending commitment. Didn't rule it out and didn't rule it in. Of course, Trump would like us to spend 3% of our GDP on defence. The Labour has not said when it's going to hit 2.5% of GDP, probably not by the end of this Parliament. He wouldn't be drawn on it, Alistair Cairns, but what he said actually was perhaps a little bit further than where ministers have gone previously, because he said, let's have the spending review, let's see where the decisions, what is needed for the military, and we're going to get that in the spring, and then we can make a decision around spending. So it may well be that we have that realignment in terms of defence spending, defence commitment capabilities, whether we're moving more towards drones. We've seen those used so effectively by both the Ukrainians and the Russians in that war. Whether we have, once the armed forces have been reshaped, actually at that point, from what Mr. Cairns is saying, they're going to come in, the government may well make a commitment around defence spending, and that could potentially see us spend £87 billion odd by the end of this parliament. The other interesting thing he said, which didn't strike me as making particular sense, was he said, it's up to Ukrainians to decide the future of their own country. And of course, this comes off the back of Nigel Farage's comments when he said, well, actually, there's going to have to be a compromise on both sides. It's a nice soundbite from the minister, but it's not true because, of course, Zelensky is heavily reliant on military support from the United States and heavily reliant on support from EU countries and indeed Britain when it comes to the military equipment and indeed funding aid to keep its war effort against Putin afloat. So in actual fact, whilst it may be a decision for Zelensky, whether he wants to accept a deal, he's going to come under enormous pressure when those talks finally come around. And of course, Trump has said in that phone call to Putin that, don't escalate things. And the insinuation from that is once I'm in office after the inauguration, let's sit down and do a deal.
I also thought it was interesting how he really wanted to play down the idea that Macron and Starmer will be, plotting at all. Yeah. It was just purely about tradition and solidarity with our nearest allies. Well, it's interesting how that hasn't happened since 1944, but, he was keen to imply there was not much sort of plotting going on and not to believe what you read in the papers. But I'm afraid, of course they're going to be talking about all of that in this bilateral.
Absolutely, and this idea that nothing's going to change when Trump assumes office, of course things are going to change. Biden has been very clear that he wants to continue, or he has funded Ukraine's war effort, got $60 billion worth of aid through just this year to support their effort against Russia, and that's been absolutely critical. But Trump, we saw the liking of sharing of a Instagram post from Donald Trump Jr., the eldest son of the president-elect, in which the insinuation was that Zelensky was about to lose his allowance, i.e. we're pulling the funding. Republicans, Trump stood on a platform of ending forever wars. This is one of those forever wars that Trump will want to end and his administration will want to bring a close to.
Theo, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. And also we're interested in what you think about what we're saying today. We've asked you to get in touch to have your say. This is our poll today. We're asking, should Reform UK, the political party, have been allowed to lay a wreath at the cenotaph? The results are in, and they are
97% in favour, saying yes, Farage should have been included among those laying a wreath. 3% of you involved in that poll saying no. We will have a final result in Martin Daubney's show from the whole day, but whilst we've been on air anyway, that's where the vote stands. And it's worth bringing in some of the views that we've had in on this topic, because lots of people saying exactly that. I'm trying to find the example that Reform should have been at the cenotaph yesterday. We were amazed that a representative wasn't there. That's Diane. Nigel Farage was there, but he was on a balcony. And John saying, I think it was absolutely disgusting that Nigel Farage was not allowed to lay a wreath at the cenotaph, as over 4 million people voted for him. This is a continuous lockout of Reform, taking part in Parliament, even not being allowed on select committees. So thank you for those of you who got involved in our poll. If you'd like to cast your vote and you haven't already, go to gbnews.com/poll.
It's November, and as our thoughts turn to the festive season and all things yo-ho-ho and everything like that, how would you like to win your celebrations on us this year?
Yes, we have £25,025 in cash to spend on a very Merry Christmas, but also shopping vouchers and a GB News goodie bag. What could be nicer? Here's how it could be yours.
I just want to tell you that Britain's newsroom this morning is live. It's live from central London, the Cenotaph. It's a Remembrance Day special.
Yes, you can find out what they have planned in just a moment. Don't move a muscle.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
On the 8th of October at Battersea Arts Centre, a new orchestra launched its inaugural season. The orchestra, which is named Chromatica, is formed of some of the best young musicians in Britain. They're due to perform in traditional venues and in community spaces. The aim is to bring their youth and dynamism to a wide repertoire of music. Predominantly, they'll work with emerging conductors who will have the chance to shape the orchestra and its repertoire. To share her experiences of bringing the ensemble together, I'm joined by the violinist and Chromatica Orchestra lead, Maren Bosma. To what extent is this novel? To what extent is this new ground?
Well, new ground, it is new ground in a sense that this is a completely new orchestra. Obviously, in the current sort of cultural climate, it's not really easy to set up a new orchestra. And so in that sense, it's a novelty for us to kind of try and carve out our space in the current climate of musical orchestras and musicians in Britain.
Yes, I mean, it's quite odd in a way to think of a new orchestra because the ones that we have tend to be struggling and numbers indeed have been reduced. I used to be associated with an orchestra which unfortunately went under. You've got some private backing for this.
Yeah.
Why do you think the private backers have been willing to give you support? What is it that they see as your unique selling proposition?
Well, Chromatica Orchestra essentially is an early career orchestra. So we're formed of all sort of top musicians who've graduated in, say, the last sort of 5 to 10 years. Because everyone is of that generation, there is a sort of enthusiasm and dynamism that we bring to the stage I think is quite unique. The orchestra's mission, it's really focused on creating opportunities for young emerging musicians.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, let's return to the commemorations for Armistice Day and cross to our GB News North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper. Good morning again to you, Sophie. Tell us what the sort of direction of travel is in Manchester where you are. How will they be remembering today?
Well, good morning to you both. Well, similar to the rest of the nation, today people here in Stoneclough and around Greater Manchester and the North West, people will gather to commemorate and to celebrate remembrance, those 2 minutes of silence at 11 o'clock. Now, you're joining us here in Stoneclough with this beautiful memorial here behind us, and joining us is the person who designed it, David D'Souza. David, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you yourself are a veteran, and that's part of what made you want to design the memorial here in Stoneclough. But just talk to us a little bit first about yourself. I know you were in Iraq in 2007, that's correct, isn't it?
It is correct. I was working as a private contractor, working in Iraq, and in December 2007, the vehicle I was driving was hit by a suicide bomber. I had severe injuries, a brain injury, a broken back, and at that time I didn't know what PTSD was on set. When I came home, I was really looked after by the insurance company, so it was close to my heart that the Royal British Legion, they help veterans. I didn't need their help, but I know that there's veterans that do, so it was really important for me to do something to raise awareness so that people like me could get help.
I know you describe yourself as lucky, don't you, the help you receive, but as you say, there are people out there, other veterans, who perhaps haven't been as lucky, and that's why it's so important that we remember and commemorate. Do you want to talk to me a bit about your design? It's absolutely beautiful, I have to say. Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
I can't take full credit for it. I came up with the idea, but the community as a whole, from school children, Cubs and Scouts, everyone came together. I put a post out and said, you know, I want you to collect plastic bottles so that I can cut the bottoms off and get them painted. We're now standing at around 38,000 plastic bottles, and what you see here today it's just an amazing community project, really. I couldn't have done it without them.
And I know yesterday on Remembrance Sunday there was a large gathering here, wasn't there, of people coming to remember, but there's one particular element that you want people to focus on, isn't there?
There is. We kind of hit it from a different angle, where we want the children involved, because we don't want in 20, 30 years' time no one stood at a cenotaph. So we really get the children involved. We have children that carry a bouquet of poppies, and we give them medals and a certificate. And many people do ask why are you giving the children a medal and a certificate, but to them it's a massive thing, and the smile on the face says it all. And then they'll tell their friends, and the families, you know, tell them about what remembrance is, why we wear the poppet, and why it's so important that we carry on this tradition.
David, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you for the work that you do. It's absolutely amazing. And that is so important, isn't it, that legacy of remembering both our past and present veterans for the sacrifices that they make for us every single day.
Indeed. Sophie, thanks very much. We were just admiring the poppies behind you on the bridge. So beautiful, the way they're sort of spilling over the top down into the river. Amazing how creative people can be with such a simple flower. Thanks very much, Sophie. Appreciate that.
Yeah. It's a still day, but a perfect day for grey, but still perfect for what's needed, what goes on, and what people have to honour there at the Arboretum and at the Cenotaph in London, and anywhere else where there are commemorations going on.
Stay tuned to GB News. We'll have full coverage for you of Armistice Day throughout the course of the day. Up next, it is Ben Leo with Britain's Newsroom, and a little bit later on, Bev and Andrew will be at the Cenotaph for you live on GB News. But for us, for now, goodbye, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good day.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So after a cloudy few days, there is some blue sky on the way as we head through the rest of this week. High pressure still very much in charge of our weather as we head over the next couple of days, bringing us those more settled conditions that we might see throughout today with plenty of sunshine around. We have seen a weather front just sinking southwards overnight, that eventually clearing the far southeast of England, and perhaps one or two showers just skirting the eastern coast of England as well. But for most of us, a dry and bright day with plenty of blue skies and plenty of sunshine on offer. Temperatures around about average for the time of year, but still feeling very pleasant in that sunshine. As we then go into Monday evening, still just a touch of cloud across the very far southwest of England, but for the majority of Scotland it will be staying dry with plenty of clear skies overnight, maybe one or two isolated showers just affecting Shetland and Orkney through the evening period. And across Northern Ireland, still staying dry overnight as well, plenty of clear spells here, and across Northern England and Northern Ireland we could see some patchy mist and fog developing during the early hours of Tuesday. For Wales and southern and central parts of England though, another dry night, plenty of clear spells around, still one or two showers just skirting the very far east of England, but for most places it should be staying dry overnight. As we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning, that's when we start to see that mist and fog developing across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and Scotland too, as we go into the start of Tuesday. And temperatures overnight under those clear skies likely to be dropping a bit chillier than we've seen recently, down into the low single figures, with a bit of a frost likely across the northern half of the UK to start on Tuesday. So a chilly start for many places, but mostly a dry start. Some of that mist and fog perhaps a little slow to clear across Northern Ireland, but for most of us it will be another dry day. Plenty of sunshine around, still some showers just lingering across the very far southeast of England, these perhaps turning heavy at times, but temperatures will be similar again on Tuesday, around about average for the time of year, so 11 or 12 in the south and 10 or 11 further north.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Murray, the A96 is closed in both directions west of Forres after an accident causing queues. Train services between Selby and Doncaster are diverting via Goole because of a point problem. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed eastbound where someone's broken down just before junction 26 at Chain Bar, causing delays. Buses replaced trains between Hensford and Rugeley Trent Valley because of overhead line problems. In Pembrokeshire, the A4219 is closed in both directions off the A40 to the southwest of Fishguard after an accident yesterday evening. On the M25 in Essex, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise where a lorry's broken down at junction 28 for the A12, with queues towards there from junction 29 for the A127, and Penzance helicopter flights to and from the Isles of Scilly are on hold because of poor visibility.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
What about train Wi-Fi? The Times. It's so funny the Times did this story because I was on the train yesterday trying to do some work and connecting to the Wi-Fi, and it happens all the time. It just doesn't work. It's pathetic. And then I opened the Times and they've done a massive investigation. Loads of different rail routes from north to south.
Was that the James Bond thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's
I think, well, that passenger got through, or almost got through, one episode of one James Bond movie in 8 hours.
But you know, it's interesting. We call it train Wi-Fi, but it isn't. It's just really a SIM card on a train, really. So if your own phone's not going to get signal, why would we assume that the train's going to have signal? It just doesn't work like that. Unless you're in Japan or South Korea, whose infrastructure is infinitely better than ours, you're just not going to get signal. You have to download those films way before you get on
There is technology that can help with that. You know, there really is. If they found ways to put it underground, they can get it on ground and get you going. I definitely think, you know, with the price that we're paying for these tickets, they can get the Wi-Fi going. There is technology.
That's why it's so frustrating, isn't
Call
it?
Elon, get a Starlink. Let's go.
If you're a passenger paying hundreds of pounds for a season ticket or whatever you call it, and you know, commute to work every single day, and you're paying all this money, and you can't.
It's so
get
expensive.
Wi-Fi.
You'd expect Wi-Fi at the basic. Yeah, exactly.
But it happens with phones.